Coming to you from the TLD studios in Temecula, California, it's the Whiskey Throttle Show, taking you deep inside the lives of the legends and leaders of our sport. This week's guest is brought to you by Yamaha, the leaders in the power sports industry. Motocross bikes, street bikes, adventure bikes, side-by-sides, quads, boats, generators. Yamaha sets the standard. Yamaha revs your heart. Method Race Wheels, the strongest, lightest, fastest wheels in off-road. Method dominates the off-road market with wheels for your truck, Sprinter, Jeep, or UTV. Go to methodracewheels.com/whiskey throttle for 20% off your order. Troy Lee Designs, built for the world's fastest racers. TLD blends elite level protection with industry-leading style and performance. Moto, bike, helmet paint, casual wear, whatever your passion, Troy Lee Designs is waiting for you on the next level. Nihilo Concepts, enhance your riding experience with superior products like the Start-Stop Conversion Kit, Fuel Pet Cocks, Frame Grip Tape, Lever Grip, Grip Donuts, Secondary On Switch, Billet Foot Pegs, Billet Throttle Housings, and so much more. Nihilo Concepts produces exceptional products, all of which are made right here in America. And by SKDA. SKDA is the ultimate destination for exceptional motocross graphics, customer service, and artistic excellence. Trust them to elevate your ride and showcase your individuality on the track, making every ride an exceptional experience. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us here at the Whiskey Throttle Show. I'm your host, David Pingree, and excited about today's guest. This guy has, over time, become one of the premier engine builders and tuners in the sport. Really a pretty cool rise to the top, and I would say in the U.S., maybe the top one or two guys actually doing it in the business with Twisted Development. It's Mr. Jaime Ellis. Jaime, thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I come to your shop often doing project builds and stuff, so I know how busy you guys are. Yeah. So just thank you for making the time to come in.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm sure it wasn't easy to cut this stuff out. But I'm excited to have you on. Like I said, I remember you kind of where I remember you coming into the sport is with Rockstar Suzuki. Yep. And I know there's more to your story. We'll go through it. But from that point on, I was like, the success you started having was wild. And still to this day, it just keeps getting better and better. So
yeah, I hope we're not done.
I don't imagine you are. Yeah. We start all of our shows with the Method Race Wheels front end chatter, guys. So if you guys are in need of wheels, methodracewheels.com/whiskey throttle, 20% off. So car, truck, Sprinter, side-by-side, whatever you got. Check those guys out. I wanted to talk about, just to start things off here, you and I were having a chat about amateur racing, and you guys are pretty heavily invested in that. You built a lot of the top kids' engines, and kind of before the show started, we were talking about how it's changed, and the model used to be, not that it was great before the internet. Guys on the East Coast, if you didn't live in California, it was a struggle, because you couldn't get your name out there. The internet changed that, but now we've shifted into this thing where you've got to, pull out of school early and go live at one of these facilities and train. It's like, man, that worries me. And then I feel like things have gotten so expensive, like the cost of that, right? Monetarily is wild. I can't even imagine. If I had to do that, I don't know that I could have done it. And I look at it, some of the greats in our sport, the Carmichaels, the Stewarts, the McGraths. These were very blue collar families. They did it on a shoestring, and it was with a lot of support of the manufacturers. And if they had to pull their kid out and go put them in this expensive camp, and I just don't know if they'd have done it. I mean, are we pricing ourselves out to where we're going to miss on some great kids, really talented kids, because they can't afford our sport anymore?
I mean, it's definitely an interesting topic. I believe that motorsports in general are going to be expensive. No matter, you want to go-kart racing, you need to have good tires. Those guys are really data heavy, really in the stopwatch, really whatever. So like anything else, I believe it's going to be expensive no matter what. I see the warrant to what you're saying, but with elevation of the sport, it's always going to become harder and harder. If you go back to your heavily day of riding, you could probably party a little bit more and not train as much and then show up and throw down for the amount of time the laps were or whatever it would have been. So I would like to think that no matter what, evolution is going to force people to be better because people are figuring out how to be better. These training facilities are implementing a race day situation like every day.
No, it's great. Yeah, no,
it's elevated the sport in so many different areas where I do believe, like as the sport grows in popularity, it's going to get harder to win too, right? Because more people are interested in it and doing it. So I think evolution is kind of pushed in the direction of what you're saying is going to make things more expensive. The more mainstream it gets, will always force more competition, more people trying harder, more training facilities, more stuff like that. So I think it's necessary for any sports growth that the direction is going to go that way.
But there is that possibility, though. There's this diamond in the rough that could go on to be the next Ryan Dungey, right? Yep. And his parents just go, man, we can't afford it. And we don't get to see that talent. He does something different.
That's a harsh reality. I grew up in Louisiana where the competition wasn't as high, right? So I got to win a lot locally. And my son, since we live in California, is getting to grow up in an area where there are a lot better riders, right? So he may not get the quick success of winning whenever he's not really that good yet, right? Like maybe like I got to experience in a lesser pool of riders. But in California, it's just so many opportunities to ride with it pretty much sun shining almost every day of the year. Yeah. So between that and then there's a lot of industry here and just a lot of multiple tracks. So I believe we breed, more opportunity here. So the level of talent is also higher, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's another factor.
Yeah. And there was another thing we were chatting about, and I wanted to get your take on this, was shootouts. Mm-hmm. You had some opinions on this based on some of the recent stuff. You want to give us to it? Because I have my opinions. Yeah. I've done shootouts, for quite a while. We stopped doing them. I did them again. Here at Whiskey Throttle Media, we've kicked around the idea, and right now I'm just like, I don't want to do them right now. I just don't. And I'll tell you my reasons why. Every single test rider has a bias. Mm-hmm. There's a bike that they're riding for most of the year, right? And they're going to be more comfortable on that. Fair. Maybe they like the way the Cowie motor applies, or they like the turning of the Suzuki. I mean, that's probably not going to get it to the top, but you know what I'm saying? Like, There's something about a bike they like, and they're going to always have that bias.
Yep. It's comfortable. It's what you know.
It's comfortable. And so I think that's a problem. And then the other thing, which I think is what you were alluding to, is that these bikes are all so stinking close. And we get in this shootout situation, and you've got to, sometimes the difference between one or the other is just you hit your lines right that lap, and this one you kind of missed it, or maybe they put some water down between one session or the other, or the track went away a little bit. And you're like, I just felt better on that one, so I'm going to give this one the nod, and this one goes to second or third or fourth. If you take the average rider, vet rider, novice, intermediate guy, if his lap time is 2 minutes, he's not varying between 159 and 201 on any bike. Right, top to bottom. So I think it's just, we make a big deal about it. And I think it is good for the manufacturers because they do get feedback that they utilize. I think that is one good thing that comes out of them. But from a consumer perspective, listening to a shootout and going, oh, well, they this so-and-so said, this bike's the best one. So that's what I'm getting. I think I tell people all the time when I was doing shootouts, find a dealer that will support you the best in your area. Pick one of his brands. And if you can ride it beforehand and see what's just comfortable to you, great. If not, pick a color. You're going to have fun on all of them.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also like the shootouts, like for my own personal reasons, right? Because I kind of like to study all the different media organizations on what they are rating top or second or third or whatever. And then it's kind of like easy work and ammo for a guy like myself. Anytime I hear something about the powertrain or, this bike lost power over last year, like, it is a fun process because we can kind of go backwards, and it's like the media has already built in for us what we're going to be able to sell the next year.
Sure.
So even for our company, like we have something coming out for the YZ250F that really increases like bottom end response. And that's what some of the outlets have said from 23 to 24 has changed. So we've already worked on something, and we'll have something to release here shortly that's going to dramatically increase bottom end and response and put that fun power band back in. So it's like, is that maybe one of the reasons why the bike didn't win the shootout? Because that one little thing that maybe Yamaha missed. But when you're in the middle of these shootouts, like I believe the manufacturers do care a lot about these shootouts because it somewhat is connected to what they think they're going to be able to sell that year. And so when the bike does really well, they're like, let's go. We're going to be able to sell some units, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of fun for us to be able to pick apart some of those things, see what general consumers are saying before the bikes really hit dealership floors, and we can kind of get a head start. So.
Yeah, I do want to call bullshit a little bit on the drama with the YZ250F this year, because not everybody. Several of the test riders were going, oh yeah, it's not as good as my 23, and one of them brought it out and rode the 23 against this brand new bike that's not really broken in. Everything's tight. You know how bikes go. It takes some time for them to loosen up. They did make a reliability change to the chain and the in there, which may affect your low end response a little.
I write that off.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I write that off.
In theory, maybe it's a little extra weight because it was just a reliability thing. But
Which
I
we
rode
love.
it and I went, it's great. Like, I don't know what all the fuss is. It was a little firm at first and we worked through that, but it's like there were several publications that were kind of, I don't think it's as good, or poo-pooing it.
Yeah.
And then when they did their shootouts, and it's now won 2 of the 3 shootouts I've read.
Yeah.
So I'm like, maybe they just weren't having a great day at the track.
So I'll date myself, but in 1997, I rode KX125s, and Pro Circuited did something about the power valve governor from the old bike, and I still remember this vaguely in my childhood of whatever. And then in 1998, we were able to get Yamahas because the dealership, like you said, that was kind of helping us, had Yamaha, Kawasaki. So the first time I rode a YZ125 takes me back to that feeling of like looking at the blue fender, and at that time the bike sounded like really high pitched and clean. And so I'm gonna probably like be a Yamaha guy forever because of that feeling and that experience I had as a kid. Mm-hmm. So if you put me on a shootout, I'm probably gonna tend towards like just assuming that this is gonna feel like my 98 YZ125 felt. So I don't know how accurate of a test rider I could be for that.
That's the inherent bias. Everybody has it. You can't get rid of it.
And then I don't know, like kind of close to that, I feel the same whenever I ride a KTM. Even though I know the Husky and the gas would be the same, I kind of in my head,
the orange fender's
like it's
better. Sick. Well, like I said, there is good things to shootouts, but I always just caution people, don't take this as gospel. It is not that's the best bike, that's the worst. Well, and I have guys, I've seen this so many times over the years. If the Honda won and the Cowie got last, there's a guy that liked the Cowie the best.
Yep.
So it's just very personal.
Well, then also too, because I've done a shootout before, and it's almost like some kind of pressure too. Like when you're doing the shootout, you don't really want to be the guy that just picks the off-brand, and everybody's like, "Dude, what do you think?" And everybody's busting balls about that. So, but also too, you have to stand firm about what you feel and how you believe and everything else. So, I don't know. I mean, I think we talked about this off air, but the Honda CRF 250, I think, was 5th and 6th in most of the shootouts. And that won the East Coast Championship, the West Coast Championship, and the outdoor title. Yeah. So that's also kind of a fun fact for me, too, to see where these stock bikes kind of rate. And then you have to go in and, like, if you're factory Honda, you don't get to really pick the direction of the way the OEM motorcycle comes. So you get that thing, and then it's like, throw it on the dyno, baseline at stock. Here we go. And then you have to start that way. So it's like, hats off to those guys. If that bike isn't really that good, allegedly, they were able to win everything. So I kind of throw a lot of the shootout out, but I also use it as a information source that I just enjoy.
Yeah, it's good entertainment, if nothing else. And for you, you're right. There is a very tangible thing. If everybody's saying the same thing about a characteristic of a bike, you go, okay, I can fix that.
Yeah.
Or get your wheels turning, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. All right, that's our Method Race Wheels front end chatter, guys. Get over to whiskeythrottlemedia.com. We've got all kinds of content. If you're not following us on Instagram, do it. If you're not following our YouTube channel, do it. Great stuff coming over there, including a lot of bike builds from this guy here. So check it out. Our guest is brought to you by Yamaha. Let's get to his story. You gave me a bottle of Bayou Dust.
Yeah.
And I laugh every time I see it in my cabinet. I haven't even had a chance to use it yet, but
it's amazing.
I'm waiting for the right opportunity.
Yeah.
Tell me what it was like growing up in Louisiana, and where were you?
Okay, so my life starts in Lake Charles, Louisiana. It's about 20 minutes 20 minutes east of the Texas line on I-10.
Oh, okay. So very west.
Yeah, about
okay.
30 minutes to get to the Gulf of Mexico.
That's close to Windham, right?
Wyndham was further east than I am.
Okay.
Wyndham started in Baton Rouge and then eventually made his way down to Centerville, Mississippi.
Okay,
so
it's further over. Then.
So he's further even east than I am. Louisiana was rad. I grew up, the motocross tracks. I could either go to Texas, there was a place in Beaumont periodically to ride, and then Houston was a decent hub. So I would get out of high school, I'd drive to this place called Highlands in Texas, just out of Houston there, and we'd be able to ride night practice and come home and whatever. So I did that a bunch. And then there's also a track in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, which is about an hour east of me. So no immediate tracks where I grew up, but I was able to, access some riding and kind of learn to ride and stuff like that. Is
it swampy where you are? I hear Louisiana and I think of like Pirates of the Caribbean, the ride over here at Disneyland, like.
Yeah, no, there's alligators and snakes and water moccasins and critters. And
what do they call the people down there in the bayou? There's a name for them.
Coon-ass.
Somebody told me that and I was like, huh, all right.
Yeah, no, they're like RCA stickers, registered coon-asses. That's what they mostly be.
Do you have any siblings?
I have a sister. Yeah, 5 years older. So a little bit of an age disconnect there, but yeah.
Okay. And what were you into as a kid? Pre-dirt bikes, was there other sports or stuff like that?
My sister played softball and my dad was a coach. So we went to a lot of travel tournaments with her, and then I played baseball for a little while. And then I pretty much took to bicycle riding. We lived near a park, and so there was, me and my buddies were building jumps daily and just kind of doing that thing. And so naturally from bicycle riding, no track stuff. There wasn't anything near us. It was just, kids in neighborhoods building ramps. And like we worked on some carpentry and did our own wood ramps and all that stuff was just fun. Just like
wood board up against a tire?
No, we actually did a little bit better than that. We learned how to properly stack 2x4s so they had strength. But no, so it was just that. It was bicycling. And then eventually somehow I worked my way into getting a dirt bike, and then it was just kind of that ever since. Like,
how was that? Who introduced you? Like, how did you?
It was one of my parents' friends, Steven Yincho, who loved dirt bikes and was kind of already dirt biking, whatever. And we jumped everything in the neighborhood on bicycles, and so he kind of talked my parents into getting a bike. And then we went. There's a place called Forest Hills in Alexandria. It's just like a trail community, and you could go out there. We would tent camp and just ride motorcycles all weekend. Mm-hmm. And then just a lot of fun doing that. So then it was like, hey, what do you think about going to a track? I'm like, oh, I don't know if I can jump anything, but yeah, I mean, I'd like to, And then
So your dad got a bike too? Like,
no. My dad's never ridden a motorcycle.
Oh, okay.
I've never even seen him ride.
But he was not even supportive of you doing it?
I have an amazing network of mother and father. I have nothing that I can complain back on with that situation. So not even having never rode motorcycles. And then my dad is like, both my mom too. I mean, they love deer hunting. They love fishing. They live out on the water now is where they're going to spend the rest of their life. And so dad, runs catfish traps and trout lines and you name it and stuff like that. Like, so I kind of screwed him a bit because
you stuck him out in the dirt.
He's like the ultimate sportsman, right? Like of Louisiana, sportsman, wildlife and fisheries, like just loves everything, like, hunting camps, like you name it, just loves it all. And then he has this kid who wants to race dirt bikes. And so I say I screwed him, but then I also like brought him to some of his best friends today are like from the motorcycle community. And he's a big cook. So he still does cookouts all the time, like rib, chili, cook-offs. Like,
so that's his.
So that's his. So yeah. So Jimbo's Cajun Products is pretty much my dad. So he has a dry rub, he has a fish fry, and he has a kind of a sweeter seasoning that kind of has fennel and some other stuff, brown sugar and fennel and stuff in it. And so that is,
not fentanyl, fennel.
Yeah, right, fennel. Yeah. Yeah. So growing up, we always have this big silver bowl, and he would have these big different seasoning things, and he'd just mix them, and he's like kind of got a small paddle in there, moving them around, and then he'd put them back into the bulk seasoning thing. So he made seasoning our whole childhood, and he, you know, did his own beef jerky, like briskets, like you name it, just loves it. And so after everybody eating his food, and he loved to cook, and he just loved to gather people. So after everybody eating, Jim, you gotta bottle that. You gotta bottle that. So that was just a product of hanging out a bunch, and, you know, him being a good guy and feeding people. And
I love the name. It's great. Yeah. So what's the weirdest food? Like, did you guys eat gator and eat?
Yeah, that's not that
big
weird.
crawfish boils, I'm sure.
Yep,
all kinds of
all that
anything
stuff.
you pull out of the water.
All that stuff's pretty standard. Like, I don't really care for liver or gizzards. Like, a lot of that stuff is there. But depending on when, like, squirrel is fine in the right season. You know, like, they have worms throughout the year, and then and most everything is about population control, right? Like, if you don't control it, where my mom and dad live, you know, they'll call the nuisance people on the gators, because the gators will get too close to the kids swimming and stuff like that. So it's like, is it right? Who's to say? But that's just the way it is. Like, you're going to try to protect people. Yeah. So whether they can capture them or move them along or whatever. But no, there's a lot of crazy food down there, and a lot of it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd do well down there. I'm kind of a picky eater, and I've seen some of the crap that gets eaten. I'm like, I don't know if I could do it. So at what point did you guys start racing then? What year was that, or how old were you?
So with the 97, I started racing with the KX125.
You'd have been how old?
14 or 15.
Okay.
And so that kind of started, and then, you know, like I said, after we kind of got started, it was like a snowball effect of chasing races and going here and going there, and it was just really all I wanted to do. It's like, motorcycles are such a vortex of bringing you in, and then once you're in, you're just like sucked into the middle of it. And then some people are smart enough to age out of it, and some people don't. Like, I think we have the best vet racing community in Southern California of anywhere in the country.
Oh yeah.
You know, like, you see these guys that show up to Saturday motocross at Glen Helen, and they're just like faithful shower-uppers, and they just, it's pretty cool.
Vet and vintage.
Yeah.
There's a huge crowd of older folks that just, it's in their blood, man.
Yeah. And as their bodies are getting more tired, they probably should be going towards a newer suspension, but they just will never say die.
Yeah. We're a stubborn bunch. So your dad was maybe, I don't want to say reluctant, but maybe it wasn't his first choice, but did he eventually fall in love with it too? And
absolutely.
You know, I always tell people all of my core memories with my dad are going to races and being at the races.
Yep.
And he had as many friends there as I did. I think he liked it as much as I did. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I honestly feel the same way. Like I said, and as you have kids now, like, I'm going through the process with my son. He's 10 years old now, and he's just like into the vortex of riding, right? Like, he's always had a bike and whatever. And now, the phone call I got while I was sitting here waiting for the show to start was, can we go to Glen Helen tomorrow? And so it's like, you do it every day, and then you do it more on your time off. But you just have this love for it that grows, you know, and watching him like fall into his own of wanting to ride more and more and more. It's like, I'm getting re-sucked into the vortex heavier than I probably have ever been from what I do for a living, as well as what he wants to do. So it's cool. It's definitely a lot of fun.
Well, even, you know, my girls, we ride. They mostly like trail. I've, you know, taken them to ride some tracks, but when we go do a trail ride and they're getting through a technical section, watching them experience that fun and like overcoming challenges, and like you see the smile, and they're going through puddles and all the dumb stuff. It's fun watching the joy through their eyes.
Yep.
You know what I mean? As a parent, it's a fun thing. Did you have aspirations at that age? Like, did you want to go pro? Were you?
I mean, I wanted to be as good as I could. To be honest, I don't know if I really ever had a vision of me racing pro, and I definitely didn't have a vision of me being a professional mechanic. Like, that was the farthest thing. As far as to like territory wise, like you said, growing up in Louisiana, we didn't, you know, for a hit and miss, we'd have the New Orleans Supercross, which was still almost 2 hours from my house. And then we had the Houston Supercross, which is 2 hours from my house. So it wasn't like motorcycling was heavy in the Louisiana culture to where, you know, I could just like fall in line and do some of it, or start being an amateur mechanic for some guy and then work my way to be a pro. Like, so I guess none of that was really a reality of my territory. So I went to school to work on airplanes and helicopters because I wanted to do like traveling. I was interested in not getting out of Louisiana, but like seeing some of the country. So like you go to school for aviation, you get a certificate to learn pretty much. You have to do a certain amount of hours. And then I took the college side of that as well. So I could kind of have a degree and everything by the time I finished that. And you kind of work somewhere remotely for a little while, and then you can go out on your own.
Okay. So you're going to be like a mobile mechanic?
No, it's contract. So like in Lake Charles, there's a Grumman, like they build a lot of the aviation stuff. So there's a port there where they work on planes. And then like, let's say in Montana, there's another one of those. You could go there, and they pay big money for these skilled laborers because they're only going to hire them for the amount of time they need to finish that plane or whatever project government they have on the books.
Okay.
So I kind of
a lot of military contracts. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it could be a military contract, but basically it was just going to be, I was going to be a contractor who could kind of choose where I wanted to live here for a while, make really good money, move to the next, so you bid these contracts, right? Where they needed aviation mechanics. Or PHI, was a helicopter company, was right next to where the school was, right? So like the oil field is really big in Louisiana, so helicopters have to fly to get people in and out of, they fly the more high-end people. They don't make them ride the boat. So there's like a taxi service of helicoptering on and offshore and stuff like that. So aviation is just pretty big there with oil field. Yeah. But I was interested in like maybe seeing more of the country and doing that type of stuff. So,
So backing up a little bit, I wanted to just touch on when you said that, there wasn't really the pro moto scene in Louisiana. Like that kind of resonated with me because in Montana, when I grew up racing, I never even thought about, like, I never went to a Supercross up there. Pro racing was like, it wasn't even, I saw it, I'd watch Moto World or whatever, but like, it was like, that was not even in my sphere of influence.
Yep.
I just loved racing. I wanted to be as good as I could be locally. Right? Like my state championship, that was the...
I won the title a couple times in Louisiana.
So it's probably real similar.
Yeah.
And when I moved to Arizona, then we went to the Phoenix Supercross, and it was like, then you start to see the scene, it's different.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Like there were some guys that had a decent amount of money, and you'd always hear about them building a Supercross track or going there or whatever, but it wasn't like it was open for anybody to ride or what,
Yeah, it wasn't tangible to you.
Yeah.
So throughout high school, you get to your senior year, you make this decision, you're going to go to aviation school.
Yep.
Was that hard to say, I guess I'm done with bikes? And
no, because I still continued riding and racing through college.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, because I started school in Lake Charles, and then I got an opportunity to transfer my schooling to it was a multi-campus. So we transferred it to Lafayette, and I actually lived at the motocross track there in Breaux Bridge. I went to work for an oil field company. It was JP Oil, and the owner of that company had 6 kids, and most of them rode motorcycles. I think I fleet maintenance like 27 motorcycles. So I'm like 18, 19 years old. Lake Charles is a college town. Lafayette is a bigger college town. So it was like there's a lot of nightlife, there's a lot of fun. In the scheme of growing cities, like Lafayette was just booming. So it's like you're getting all these new chain restaurants. It was just kind of fun.
Yeah.
So moving there and doing that, and able to finish school, and then I still got to go to the races because I was working for the oil field company as their family mechanic, and so the kids raced, I raced. It was pretty perfect as far as the situation.
That's a perfect scenario.
So I didn't have to just like give up on riding, if that makes sense.
So before you went to this school, you said you didn't really have any inclination to be a mechanic, or were you good at working on your bike? Did you work on your own bikes? Did you have interest in that?
It's probably average at best. Working on my own bike. Okay. I like to ride them a lot more at the time than I like to work on them.
And so the interest in aviation school was just more like career oriented, like this will be a good career for me?
So I had a buddy who I met through the Yamaha Kawasaki shop, and he was he was in Lake Charles as a contract aviation guy, and making really good money, riding motorcycles. And so I don't know, like he kind of is like, hey, if you don't know what you're doing, you should probably think about doing this. Like, it's pretty cool. And so he kind of pitched me the idea, and I thought, well, I mean, working on something that flies is a little bit more prestigious than anything else. So I guess I really didn't have a whole lot of direction outside of just knowing I wanted to do something with my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always believe that if you kind of get a degree in something, you can pivot after, but you have to like finish getting through at least having some certificate of what you've.
Yeah.
And I view that the same as like, if you can finish college to have a certificate, you kind of can show up and be held accountable. Mm-hmm. So like I look to that to people, not that I think that it makes you better than anyone else. I just see that, hey, these people have followed through.
Mm-hmm. I got told some advice I thought was really good. I try to repeat it when I can. It's like, if you don't know what you want to do or where you're really headed, it's, you know, your career path's a lot like a bicycle. It's impossible to steer when you're at a standstill. So just start pedaling.
Yeah.
Go one way in it. You probably, you know, like you did, you hung a left.
Yeah.
But, you know, you wouldn't be here if you didn't start there, right?
Correct. 1,000,000%. And I did learn a lot in the school.
I was going to say, did any of it transfer over?
Yeah, it all transfers
turbine,
over.
like a lot of turbine engines, right? Probably?
Yeah, we did pistons, we did turbine engines, you know, aircraft, like the airframe,
Okay.
you know, how to repair buck and bar rivets. And, you know, they gave us little projects. Like I built a motorcycle stand for my project,
Okay.
you know, on how to rivet and whatever. But yeah, no, so it was definitely a good learning experience. Like I said, it gives you the certificate to learn. Mm-hmm. It's like graduating MMI. Like, do you get to go work for the highest level guy? No. Like,
Yeah. Start with the privateer and, you
still have to cut your teeth.
Okay. So your first job, if I got this right, was with Jeff DeMint.
Yeah.
My first professional in the motorcycle
right.
world.
Yep.
And that was 05 with Maestro Suzuki. And I was thinking, man, weren't they a European team? Like, I'm trying to remember Maestro. No. Like, it rings a bell with me, but I can't remember.
So Maestro, I believe, and this is what I was told of it. So if you look on the back of any debit or credit card at that time,
that's
Maestro was the credit card processor. So Jeff Edwards, I think, was the guy's name. And he had this really lavish, awesome house in Houston with a go-kart track and everything. And so he was like, man, we're going to start a team, whatever. And so I was still riding and racing. And this guy named Randall Harris from ProWorks Racing in Houston was doing my motors and suspension at the time. And he was just a good guy helping, like really enthusiastic, you know. And so I graduated school. I was living on this property, renting a house, and there was a motocross track there we had built. And it was just kind of the right time where he was like, "Hey man, you graduated school. Come be a mechanic. Give me one Supercross series. Just come with me. It'll be fun." And so I'm like, I thought about it for a while. Like I was dating this girl, and I'm like, I had to kind of break her the news that I was going to go on the road and be gone. So that went over pretty terrible. But I put all my stuff in storage, and then like we had a show hauler with a, you know, kind of a stacker trailer. And
where were they out of? Houston?
So they were out of Houston, which that's where my buddy Randall's shop was.
Okay.
And so I was still in Lafayette, but primarily we went, you know, from hotel to hotel kind of for that time. And then we were going into the outdoor nationals, and then Jeff got hurt in Colorado. So then that kind of put like the end on me traveling with the team and doing whatever.
Okay.
So then I go back to Houston, and I'm just working in Randall's shop. And
what was your experience? Let me just back up a little bit. You know, you go into your first Supercross as a mechanic, and were you, you know, sucked in right away to the scene?
Well, I would say that my experience was the fact that like I was still riding and racing like right until the point where I went on the road.
Okay.
And I felt as if I was as close to being out there as I could be, even though I was on the sidelines. So there was a decent amount of time that I wasn't overly motivated to ride because I felt the same. Like, and then whenever I got a bike and I kind of rode again some, it felt like I'd never lost any of my progression because I had been so close to watching people, you know, from the mechanics area for so long that was kind of a weird feeling because I'm like, I would get tired, but then I still felt like I still could go as fast as I was going whenever I kind of slowed down. Mm-hmm. But it was, I'd say probably the biggest thing that was exciting for me was the fact that I felt as if I was still out there and I was taking no risk.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like
it is a very close tie. Like when I was managing Troy's team, when I would be in the manager's tower and they're 30-second cards up, man, my adrenaline's, I'm sure as a mechanic, it's the same. You're just, you're only one step off of actually being on the bike. You're so amped up for
Yeah.
it, and it's as close as you can be without actually doing it.
It is, and that's
a lot less risk.
Right. So, and it's kind of cool sometimes. Like you'll see these riders that were pretty good. They'll turn some of the best mechanics, right? Because they can relate to what the rider's saying and still have some input with what's going on. And then there's just kind of like the mechanic that you could tell he was taking apart stuff as a kid and just loves to understand how things work. And so like I believe like team managers, like, you know, like you said, like ex rider turns team manager, that's one path. Mechanic turned team manager, that's a whole different path. And sometimes there's relatability between the rider team manager to the rider, but then not to the staff because they don't really understand what's going on. So I think it'd be an age-old argument on who makes a better team manager to lead the team.
Yeah, like crew chief to team manager or rider to team manager.
Yeah,
I agree. Both have strengths.
Yeah, in different departments. It's like sometimes some of the riders like didn't even show up on time or bring lunch, you know, and it's like, dude, we're out here all day. Like you should look after yourself.
Yeah.
And then, you know, and then now they're going to be team manager. So I'm not saying that everybody's like that, but it is a possibility, right?
Yeah.
Because they were really good. They got put into these cool positions. So it's just interesting to see how these things like if you, I guess there would never be like a chart of who's been more successful, but it's just fun.
It is. No, it's super interesting. You're right. That would be fun to go back and look at most successful team managers and look at the paths they took.
Yeah.
Where did they come from? You know, it's interesting. How did you meet Dement, or you just got put into him because of that
Randall.
team? Okay.
Yeah. Randall put me.
Did you guys
in
get
there.
along okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dement was funny.
Yeah.
I don't know if you raced him much, but
we were teammates in 1990 at Suzuki on mini bikes.
Okay.
And he was like Suzuki's fair-haired boy.
Yeah.
And I was like kind of slated to take his spot when he moved up. And so I listened to him all the time. He got me into some trouble.
I bet he did.
But I really looked up to him, and that dude could ride a dirt bike.
Yeah.
You know, he had some injuries, and I think his pro career probably didn't go the way he wanted, but
Yeah.
that guy was legit.
He's wild.
Yeah. You still keep in touch with him or no?
I haven't talked to him in a while, but if we talked, it would feel like old times. Like I think he would just go right, "What's up, Ellis?" You know, and just like right into the broing down. And no, he's a class act.
Yeah. Okay, so after that season, what was next? What was 2006 for you?
Okay, so in Colorado,
there's kind of a
year,
window there. I couldn't find anything on what you were doing.
Yeah, so in Colorado that year, Dement was on fire. Like,
was that the night race?
No, it was a day race.
Okay,
I remember that, but it was a day race, and
I guess that was later, 2009 or something, maybe.
Yeah, so he was up, like I say up front in the 450 class. I don't know if he's like second or third. Like, whoa, Jeff, go, right?
Yeah,
and then he somehow got pushed off the track into a bad situation, crashed pretty bad, and so that was the end of Jeff. Well, I'd already been talking to Dave Osterman,
okay,
because he was at Yamaha Troy, and Timmy Tyler is the glue that put all of it together for me.
Okay,
Louisiana boys stick together, and so he was a pro circuit truck driver. You remember Timmy?
Yep.
So he was a pro circuit truck driver, and he used to come home and build the tracks in Louisiana and would help out with the local motocross track. So I lived at the one that he would help with.
Okay.
And so I told Timmy that, hey, you know, I'd done the East Coast Supercross Series. I'd done a couple nationals, whatever. I really want to try to get a job and keep doing this. And so he linked me up with Dave Osterman, which I had an interview with in Colorado anyway. And then I went home to work at Randall's shop.
That's serendipitous. Like,
yep.
Meet with him and your guy gets hurt.
Yep. And so I go home and I work in Randall's shop until Supercross starts the following season. So in 2005, I drove my pickup truck and my tools out to Bakersfield. And that's where, so the oil company I work for, JP Oil, they have a facility in Bakersfield, and they have in Lafayette and various throughout the world. But anyway, so I drove straight to his Bakersfield place, spent the night. And then that next morning, I drove to Yamaha Troy and started there. So I worked with Brett Metcalf, and we had the all-new aluminum YZ250F. So it was a 2006 bike, but it was a pre-production, you know, in 2005. Yeah. So then we trained a couple weeks or whatever, and then we went and we raced the U.S. Open. So that was like first race, first place Yamaha ads, because we had won the U.S. Open that year.
Were they still doing 125s that year too? Or was that just
He was on 125s, I think, maybe 1 to 2 years before that. But he had already been on 250Fs for maybe a season.
Okay. I was trying to remember the years because remember they did, maybe that was 02, 03, but he was riding a 125 and there was 2 125s, 2 250s, right?
Yeah.
When they started.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry.
So I got along with Brett really well. His girlfriend at the time, Sheena, were kind of like family. My girlfriend that I had met, who is now my wife, and Sheena were tight, and so we spent a lot of time together. And then Brett went home to Australia for holiday, and at the time with the team, it was like all the mechanics weren't assigned yet because it was still early in the year. You know, we were like, when was the U.S. Open? Like October, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're still like kind of getting to know everyone, whatever. And so we're like from Valencia down to the Corona test track was kind of a haul. So we'd have to meet at the shop early, load our bikes the night before everything, and we'd go down for the day. So since Brett was gone, everybody was kind of working and helping everybody. And so that brought Andrew McFarland to the team from Europe. And he requested me to be his mechanic because everything was going really well, you know, between us. And so Brett kind of came back from Australia to find his mechanics now with somebody else. And I didn't have a say in the gig anyway. It's like, so that left Mehdi and I to be really good friends anyway. And so we're still pretty close today.
Dude's farming hair like crazy. I saw a picture of him the other day. It's like down to half the way down his back.
He looks more like Kevin Windham than Kevin Windham does now, huh? Like Forrest Gump.
Yeah. I miss Mehdi. He's a good dude.
Yeah.
Okay, so you worked for him in 06, or McFarland.
Yep.
How'd that season go? And how was that transition to Yamaha of Troy? I mean, that was a tight program. They had a really good setup there for a while. And
yep. Yeah, we had Frenchie doing the engines, and he was really good to the crew. Like really stern, but he, you know, if you made a mistake, like he'd come after you for it. But at the time, we were all pretty young mechanics. We really needed that guidance anyway, so it was actually pretty perfect.
Did he work with you guys a lot on helping you understand engine development and especially four strokes?
He was an open book.
Okay.
Like if you had an idea, he wasn't going to turn you down from it. Frenchie got to where he got to from a really hard work ethic. Like if you had an idea, he wouldn't be like, no, that'll never work. He'd be like, okay, let's try it. Like and so like that's what kind of helped our team get forward at the time and build a lot of the platform. And then with the same stuff, I think J-Law went on the next year to win, you know, the championship.
Yeah.
So he came over in 07. So I had left there at the end of 06 to go to factory KTM and work with Michael Essie.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. So what was the reason for that switch?
A little bit more money. I always thought that if I could get connected to a factory team, I was probably pretty naive. I was like, oh man, you know, I could retire there, and then if I wanted to move into the media department, so I didn't have to go to races, like or the R&D department, I just saw all of these avenues of things that I didn't really, you know, maybe the vision of what I like, the young Louisiana boy vision of not really knowing the ins and outs of everything. I was just kind of motivated to get to a factory team, and you know, like everything else, networking in life is kind of what helps, right? Like. We had a couple opportunities. We were at dinner or stayed at a hotel where the KTM guys were and whatever. So I kind of got to know some of them, and they saw my bike. The graphics were put on straight and no bolts were falling off. And so as they are trying to hire or whatever, so I always say, like, you know, you have to focus on your bike first. You have to be able to at a minimum, you have to hold all the bolts tight, right? Like that's a minimum. And then to go above and beyond is like washing boots or anything that can make the rider's life better to get a better result. Like those are the guys that excel, that understand the whole package. It's more than just
your responsibility isn't just bike, right?
Correct.
You're a team. The good mechanics realize that I can influence this rider better or worse, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah,
you're kind of that's a like shrink, and you're a friend, and you're a
riding coach,
your big brother. Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of just wanted to get to that environment as quick as I could.
Okay.
And like I said, the door opened, so I kind of went for it and went down there.
And so Roger wasn't there yet. Who was still running the team? Was it Kurt Nickel?
Kurt Nicole and Casey Lytle was my direct boss.
Okay. And your job was, you were still mechanic?
Yeah.
For
I
Mike
was a mechanic. Okay. Yep. I was a mechanic for Mike. We went through Supercross, made it to Southwick. Tony and I didn't see eye to eye on some things. I got told that, that from one of the staff there who remained silent is like, hey, you tell Tony Ellis he's not your boss and that I am, and that, you'll do what I say. And I'm like, all right. So whenever the time came and I portrayed that information, Mike was going to end up getting shoulder surgery if I still became being the mechanic because of my actions with Tony or whatever, for standing up for myself, basically just doing what I was told to do.
Yeah.
So then it was kind of like a big rigmarole. And ultimately, it's one of the most thankful things that I've ever had happen in my life, blindsidedly, because the rest of that year, I got to be in the dyno room where like I would have had to been with Mike and doing all these races and everything else. So that's kind of what led me, spearheaded me to go like Leighton Rice. Leighton's been there forever. He let me do some of the dyno work, and at that time, it was still carburetors. So I got to learn a lot about carburetors, and I kind of had a lot of time. Like I got one of the tasks because we were doing Motocross of Nations, I think at Budds Creek that year. So I got a task to take a stock bike on FIM fuel, to dyno it, to do the carburetor settings, to do all that. That way, whenever the Euros came over, we could provide them a plug and play something. So like that's really what gave me access to dynoing and learning carburetors, which the extensive carburetor knowledge that I felt I got to learn from having the paid time to learn it is one of the things that leapfrogs us forward in the fuel injection world, to know what it takes to be able to supply fuel or whatever, just the demand of the engine.
You really understand what's going on, the physiology, if you will, of how fuel and air are flowing through that carb.
Yeah.
And you're from Louisiana. Is it carburetor or carburetor?
Carburetor.
Okay. That's what I mean.
If I'm home for a week, it might change. My accent comes back thick.
Okay. So I kind of I was curious. I was waiting to hear when you made this transition to development, and that sounds like that was it.
Yeah, that was it.
That was 06?
So I moved there in 06 after the Supercross series in 06.
So that was 07 season.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. So were you and Mike, was your relationship strained with all that, or are you guys?
No,
okay?
Mike and I are still good.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike will kind of do whatever Tony asks of him. And so Mike and I are still good.
Okay. So going into the next year, you stayed 08?
Yep. Yeah, so I had a 2-year deal, which was cool. And then I'd kind of moved on to development stuff. I got to build a bike for Kevin Windham, which...
For what?
Louisiana boy getting to build a bike for Kevin Windham was probably one of my highlights of the time. But yeah, so I mean, I guess we can talk about it now. But so no, Kevin came out to ride the KTM, and it was a potential option in 2008. And it was kind of like a dream come true for a Louisiana kid to get to build a bike for a Louisiana hero, right? Yeah. As we all agree he is. And so that was kind of one of my highlights there, was that. He loved the bike. They couldn't put the deal together. And at that time, they were still dealing with the Bud Light KTM / McGrath failure. So I think it would have just been like a pretty bold risk to bring a guy like Kevin, because when did he really stop racing? I don't know the year.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look, but
if you know what I mean, like he was kind of on the back end of his highlights of being amazing, and so it could have been probably a risk that maybe the brand wasn't ready to take at the time, or I don't know the details of why it didn't work out, but I was just stoked I got to build the dude a bike.
Yeah. And he came out and you went out with the test.
Oh yeah. So that was cool. And so after that we had, we brought Nick Way over. So kind of going into 24, I hope it doesn't mirror what happened into 2008, but you remember the economy was really weird at that time. Like interest only loans were kind of like popping and stuff was going crazy. So KTM wasn't the mega horsepower that they are today of bike brand with 3 different lines and everything else. But at that time, whenever money went tight, they chose MDK to come in and be the factory partner. So luckily I had a 2-year deal, which shored me up to still be a race mechanic. And so MDK previously had Nick Way on the Hondas.
Yeah.
And this, you know, they were building parts and doing stuff like that. Well, I think the guy's Pete Hahn was one of the part guys.
Okay.
And so, so naturally Nick was kind of either signed or owed money or whatever. So he came over to the KTM program. And so I was Nick's mechanic in 2008. So that you know, we did supercross and motocross, whatever.
So under the MDK rig.
Yeah. So Martin Davalos was signed through Factory KTM. His mechanic Jay Burgess had a 2-year deal. I had a 2-year deal, and then we would just work out of the MDK truck on the weekends.
Okay.
So Martin and Nick were still at Factory KTM in house, but we flew under the MDK banner on the weekends because of the merger with MDK to take over Factory KTM Racing.
Okay. And then what about 09? So was that season fun with Nick?
It was super fun. I mean, if you know Nick, he makes everything fun. And going back to like being the mechanic thing, like I like to sit right behind my bike, and I like to just like, I'll grab the 8 and I'll do laps on the 8 mils. I'll grab the 10, I'll do laps, you know. And so like I'd constantly just kind of do that because Andrew McFarland taught me that. And it's something like the greatest gift he ever gave me was, you know, like at that point, Nick would be like, yo, Ellis, those bolts are tight. Like you can lay off of it. And so I always tell that story because it's so important to a rider who is jumping and doing those things and risking his life that if he believes the mechanic has done his job, it's one less thing for him to think of.
Yeah.
You know, so Nick's obviously always made it fun, and we still work together to this day. Nick Way's he's a behind the scenes guy, and you actually see him kind of on the scenes with training those riders or whatever, but he has long fingers, and they're involved in all kinds of things that people don't know what he's doing. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's not a lot of guys that I think that don't like Nick. I don't think he makes enemies.
No.
You know, he's a pretty nice guy. So going to 09, what'd you do that year? Because your contract's up.
Yep, contract's up. And then KTM offered me a position to stay, but MDK was going to officially take over what is Factory KTM Racing. And so they like, hey, you know, this is Kurt, pulled me in the office, whatever. And he's like, hey, you know, Mike Brown's going to be racing off-road and Durocross and everything. So we want to keep you. You've been an asset here. So we're going to put you with Mike Brown. So I built a bike for Mike, and it's like in my work area, I had like bins and bins and bins of titanium bolts and all kinds of really, you know, the 08 KTM was kind of a pig, but we made it as light as we could with everything that we could, you know. And so in my work area, I got to keep my same work area, and I had all that stuff in there. And then I built my first Endurocross bike, and it had like a half-inch thick skid plate, it felt like, and like all of the steel bolts.
What was it? Was it a 450?
At the time, I think it might have been a 450. Yeah, because they switched to 250s and 350s eventually. Yeah. But yeah, and then I go to put it on the stand, and I can noticeably tell how much heavier this thing is, you know, from all the bash guards and like everything else was just, and so I don't know. I was just kind of like, and I built it before the last couple nationals. So like I still had an opportunity to maybe like network my way into a different position, you know, cause like it'd be weird if you flew out to Steel City and the rest of the team's there, but you're not working and you're like walking around with resumes. Like it's like a walk of shame. But at those times, and it was my wife, she was like, well, you need to do something. If you don't want to work in off-road, you need to figure this out. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I kind of like talked around some at the last couple nationals and networked away into going to work for, at the time, was Canada Kawasaki. Okay. So
Bill Keefe was running it at the time?
Bill Keefe was running it, yep. And so I'd had an opportunity to go there, and I could drive and I could live in my same house. I didn't have to move or whatever. And so I ended up doing that. So long story short, I went to work for Canada Kawasaki, which was PJ Larson, and he ended up being the rider I worked for. And then the next year, so Bobby Hewitt owned the team, and Bill was managing it, if you remember. Yep. And so kind of directly, like, Bobby and I got along really well, so he put me with Hunter, his son. And then the following year, I ran a program with just Hunter. So we were out of a show hauler instead of So that gets us to 2010. So it was just Hunter and I. So I was working directly for Bobby. I was still in the same shop as Candidate Kawasaki, which turned Rockstar Suzuki. And
were you doing during that time? Were you helping with development at all? Or
yes,
okay,
yeah. So because we were in the corner of the shop, they were factory Suzuki, and I was working with Damon at Pro Circuit. And I bought the Vortex software, and Josh Pitts and I are really close friends because he always did our fuel throughout the years.
Okay.
And so he's learning the software, I'm learning the software. We're kind of just like ping ponging off of each other. And I'm like, hey, I'm gonna dive into this part of it today and try to figure out what it does. And so like him and I just had a lot of late nights and early mornings, just kind of playing around and learning and whatever. And so it eventually worked out between the help of Pro Circuit and the relentless stuff we were trying or whatever, like our little corner project, because we all use the same dyno, was outperforming the factory bikes.
Oh yeah.
Through, Yoshimura Japan and whatever else. And so then that opened Bobby's eyes to be able to like, hey, we can start doing some of this on our own. Right. And so that's kind of the evolution of another big pivot for me, because I was in the corner and I also had time, and I was ordering the parts. I was, building the engines. I was not driving the rig, doing everything else. So that allowed, I think somebody got hurt on the factory team. So then that moved Hunter into the factory team, which then kind of like we started working on stuff after we realized that we weren't going to get any better stuff than we were getting. So we were just kind of hammering out and just going through testing more cams, testing more pistons. Obviously we have control of the ECU at that point. And then, so going into the 2012 year, we kind of lost direct factory support, which we were headed down the path of doing our own engine development anyway. So I'd say in 2012 was the first year that we actually started doing the engines ourselves and go in that direction.
Who were the people that helped you, when it comes to like cam design or even mapping? Like that's hard to learn on your own, right? I mean, was there people who guided you, steered you, gave you advice, kind of showed you how that works? So
the owner of Vortex would come down. He invested, heavily in me, and we still have a great friendship to this day. I could kind of call him and ask him, his primarily, job is being the owner of Vortex, and he has smart people that work underneath him that do the coding and software and all that stuff. And then he would be responsible for the actual production of the ECU maps that kind of go into the product that's sold. So he has a really good wide knowledge, and he's just a really technical guy. And so he's been a resource for me for all of that time. Like I said, Josh Pitts and I would work back and forth or whatever, because we were kind of learning different things at different times. Primarily the car world. The car world is about 10 plus years ahead of motorcycling. So all of the research that I could do late at night or early in the morning when I can't sleep would be like try to study car stuff, right? EFI and cars been around for way longer than motorcycles. So the same principles apply, and there's a knowledge base of stuff there that you can go and get and start learning. So I'd say that those were the instrumental things that kind of helped me to start to figure out what's going on and cause and effect. And
it's interesting to me when these transitions happen, right? Like when we went to 4-strokes, Mitch at Pro Circuit hired that Drino Miller. I don't know if you knew Drino.
No, I didn't know him, but I've heard the rumors of how smart he was.
He's since passed, but he was, and I didn't know him super well, but Mitch tells stories of this guy. He was like on another level with 4-stroke engine development. And if you remember how good Mitch's bikes were in 05, 6, 7, 8, it was an unreal advantage. Not taking anything away from his guys at the time, but like they were way ahead of the curve. And so I just wonder, it's always interesting to me, like who helps or how those jumps get made when we go to EFI. Because now I would say, and we'll talk more about this in a little bit, mapping is probably the most important component. The electronics, what you do on a computer is probably more important than any of the other hard parts on the bike, which is so, I mean, it makes sense, but it's so weird coming from a guy who used carburetors. You know what I mean? Like I was 2-stroke guy with carb, right? So just, it's such a different world.
So there's, and this is an important step, so I will want to touch on this, but there's a group of girls in Riverside at Webcam, and they're like the female version of Horsepower, right? So there's not a man in the building that picks the cam specs.
Really?
It is a whole group of women, and they have been doing it together, like a really tight-knit group, for a long time. They just know what it takes. They have the trial and error. So the camshaft development kind of starts as a process, right? Like, you know where your stock ones are, mm-hmm. you know, the lift, the ramp angle, that type of stuff. And then you can kind of go from there, right? Mm-hmm. And so they have a cam doctor, and then that thing rolls it backwards, puts an output graph, and they have they call them not cores, but they call them like a certain amount of numbers of cams that they have that they've already built, masters, that's what they're called. Okay. So they have so many masters. So then you kind of digitally look at all the masters within that cam range. So like let's say 400 thousandths of an inch is what a cam lift is, and so there's only variables of that. You know what I mean? There's the base circle, and then there's that. Right. So when you go into the software backwards, and these women know what will work for the most part. So it's like, I do heavily lean on vendors, and I try to not screw anybody over ever, so that whenever I need help, I can call, and I'm never too proud to ask for help. So I'd say that that's probably the biggest attribute. Like, when people want to help you, you can get somewhere a lot faster than if you say you know everything and whatever. So that's just my approach. That, hey, whenever, like, we're working on more torque right now for a Yamaha 250F, big horsepower, everything's fine. I just want more torque out of it, because what we build some of the other bikes, I know, like the Suzuki is the king of torque, and you're probably not going to match that with a downdraft style port. So we're trying to do all these kind of different things to figure out what it's going to take to get close to that Suzuki on the torque side.
I would have never guessed that. You're telling me a Suzuki 250 has more torque than a Yamaha?
Absolutely.
Wow.
And nobody will ever guess it, but like the way, and once again, we've been building that engine for a really long time, but the engine hasn't changed. So fortunately, like, a lot of the stuff we've applied back then have kind of stayed the same. But the downdraft port, like when you look through an intake port and you can see most of the valve, that's not going to create like a really high flow situation. And so whenever you try to create that through porting or the lift of the cam or whatever, sometimes it doesn't always work the same. So the new style of engine is going to be downdraft port and straight exhaust, right? Like, you can see all the frames have changed. Mm-hmm. Even the new KX450 is going that way, which, guess what? The 25 KX250 will follow in suit, you know. Right. So the straighter you can get the air and fuel in and out is obviously efficient. And at some point, that efficiency turns to a really high RPM, you know, model. So getting the torque out is going to be the challenge of the next 10 years, because the manufacturers want to push out these safe high horsepower numbers, you know, for the shootouts, for when the media guys do dyno results or whatever. But however, the challenge is, I believe the torque gets you over triples. It gets you out of every turn, you know. So
we're going to touch on this again, because I've got other questions in here about performance. So we're going to get to that again. That's interesting. Okay, so through that season, take me through that year. This was 2011 and 12. You were with them working with Hunter.
Yeah, so 11, I kind of take over building the engines at the end of 11. And then so the whole 2012 season, Rockstar Suzuki is just us internally.
Yep.
We had Martin Davalos, Ryan Sipes, Blake Wharton, and Jason Anderson.
All 250.
All 250s. Yeah, okay. No 450s through 2012.
Okay.
So we podium both coast at some point. Fun fact, Jason Anderson gets benched during the outdoor nationals.
Just for not performing. I remember that, right?
They said was there something fitness. Else? Oh, yes, okay. It's fitness or whatever. But once again, like, that's a pivotal moment in Jason's career that I don't know if you've ever taken him on the show, but I don't know if he'd bring that up. But he was pretty awesome after he had that reality check, because he won so much as a kid, and then I don't know. So that was kind of a.
I remember when that happened, and I thought, man, that's a pretty like bold move.
Yeah.
From management's part, like we're not sending you to the race. You know, you need to get your crap together.
Yeah.
Pretty heavy for a rider.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But you either rise to it or you let it crush you, right?
Yep. Yeah. So we finished that year as Rockstar Suzuki. Rockstar's still growing in brand equity and everything. They're doing well. So they're like, hey, we want a 450 guy. So we built a 450 for Davalos, I think for not US Open. At that time, it was still the Monster Energy Cup. So we had already kind of had a little bit of a platform, threw some stuff together. The bike was fast enough. Everything was great. And then I think they signed Millsaps without him even ever trying a bike.
Was he coming off Honda?
He was coming off JGR. So he had finished second in the championship that year for JGR. And Rockstar went after him, threw him a decent amount of money, and he moved back to California and all this stuff. So he did that deal. So we built the bike. We worked on the bike pretty much the off season, which at that time, if you remember, Stewart in 13 didn't want to ride the 13 chassis. He wanted the 12 chassis because they changed the bolt for the linkage and it stiffened everything up and whatever. Well, Davey didn't know any better. So we're just off on our own little island. We had our own supercross track at Milestone in that back corner back there. I
remember that.
And he only rode the one track. Never went anywhere else, never did anything. Some of these guys get quirky like that, and he just rode the one track. And we remodeled it a couple times. It was pretty much just there. And he went out to win the opener that year.
That's the year I really remember seeing you and going, wow, this guy put together a hell of a program. I mean, and that's why all that stuff leading up, I just wasn't aware of. And it's super interesting. That's obviously, you know, when they say took you 10 years to become an overnight success, I mean, you see it right here. But that had to be, wow, what a moment for you guys, the team, for
hair
you.
Stands up.
For Davey. Because even for him, it was a resurgence. He was kind of, I don't think he'd won in a while, if I remember right.
No, I don't think he had. I think he won San Diego before or something the year,
on
2 years before. Yeah, but it had been a little while. And another fun fact. So, you know, we left practice or whatever, and I'm like walking back the tunnel, and Tony Alessi stops me. And my strained relationship with Tony Alessi from pretty much getting me fired. And then he goes, your guy's going to win tonight. And I'm like, okay. And I just kept walking up the tunnel. And so that was kind of another, like, caught me off guard moment. But then he did go out and win. So it was actually really cool.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I remember that. I was in the stands watching, just going, I think like everybody, like, holy crap.
Yeah.
This is a trip, you know, good for them. Like, this is great. But
because at that time, like, so Davey was a big boy.
Did you anticipate that? Like, when you're seeing him at the test track, you going, dude,
no, he was going really fast. He was flying.
But you'd probably seen enough of that. Guys going great preseason, and then it just doesn't translate to wins.
I can't say that I knew that we were going to show up and win. There's no way I could say that. I just knew that he'd be a dog in the fight because he was on top of his game. And it was funny too because it got back to the Stewart camp on how fast Davey's bike was and all this stuff. And it was like we rolled up for press day, and like Stewart and, you know, the factory Suzuki guys are all over here, and Davey just rolls right in front of Stewart, just like a power flex move. And so Stewart's just like staring at his bike the whole time. And so we're on the headsets laughing because we can just see him like zoned in on Davey's bike because he had been hearing so much about it and whatever. And then for Davey to go out and like be top qualifier and, you know, just kind of go through the night like awesome.
I'm trying to remember, was that the night Stu crashed on the first lap and knocked himself out?
I just remember the canard battle with Davey. I don't remember all the other details.
Yeah, that's all blurring together from you. Okay. So take me through the rest of that year. He led for what, you say, 9 rounds?
I think we led into like the 12 or 13 rounds, like pretty deep into.
Deep, yeah. I didn't realize that. It's funny, actually, I have a number 1 or a red plate, number 18. I'll show you later, but nice. From that year, one of those races where he was leading.
So he, you know, it got to the point where we were having, because I was the crew chief doing the mapping, ordering the parts, developing the engines, whatever. And so we had a closed door semi-meeting with Bobby Hewitt and Rockstar and everybody. And I think Bobby was trying to prep Rockstar to like maybe have to spend more money. But it was a really stressful moment where Bobby's a very serious businessman, and he would not have screwed Davey if Davey won the championship. But there was no funding in place for him to win.
You guys didn't take out a Lloyd's of London policy?
I think it started at second. So the bittersweetness of like, hey, we're going to potentially win this championship. And obviously you don't, throw something in the spokes at that point. But knowing you may have to sell some assets to make whole. So it could have shut the team down hypothetically if he did.
What was his bonus? $1 million?
I mean, it was a lot.
Yeah.
I don't remember that technical information, but it was enough that it had Bobby Hewitt stressed.
Sweating.
Yeah, so Dave Gallen, was another key factor that we didn't really talk about, but he came into the team at late 2012.
Okay.
So probably late 2011. So he was at Thor forever. And him and Bobby, he was at Kawasaki before that, and so that kind of helped Bobby be on Kawasaki's to start Canada Kawasaki, team and whatever. So Dave is always going to look after his buddy Bobby, and Bobby's always going to look after his buddy Dave. So if you see in the Triumph Monster Energy,
now he's at Monster. Dave's a
people look after their friends.
Bigwig, yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I wish I was friends with those guys.
Yeah, same.
So. You dodged that bullet. Did Rockstar say they would have stepped up, or what was the vibe?
I'm confident that it wouldn't have went negative, but it was a conversation that had to be had.
At that point, 10 rounds in, you're like, hey guys,
yeah,
we have a good problem.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so he ended up cashing out. I think he ended up second, didn't he?
I think so.
Yeah.
Who won that year?
Villo got him towards the end. But I will say my favorite race of all time was Denver. So Davey challenged me early on whenever he first got there. He's like, you can't build a bike, it's too fast. I can ride anything. And so I'm like, okay, well, if I do get to that point where we actually build a bike that's too fast, will you be able to say something, or are you just going to be like, naive about it and just deal with it? And he goes, I'll tell you. And so it wasn't until close to Anaheim that I did build that bike that was too fast.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, I believe in every engine building situation, you kind of have to have like an aha moment, like I gotcha. And so I got him. We designed this new piston, threw all this stuff together. Like we were doing a lot of cam timing stuff and whatever. And so we finally built this bike. And I remember coming out of the dyno room, I was just kind of laughing and like giggly about it.
Yeah.
And so it was like, all right, well, we'll have you try it, So I did all the mapping on it and everything, and I took it to the track. And so this bike was just like never going to be raced. It was just retarded.
You knew coming out of the dyno room, you're like, all right, this is a waste of time. We've made too much.
Yeah. So, and if you talk to Davey, he'll still tell you about that bike because we put the engine aside after we track tested it and it was just too much. And then we took that engine to Denver for the Colorado race. Oh. And so that race is in my brain one of the best races that had the whole year. Because even though he won San Diego, he won Anaheim, like he, had a good year. It was him, Villapoto, and Dungy, and they just freight trained each other, just like 3 bikes wide, passing back and forth. And so that was the highlight of my time.
2013 Denver.
2013 Denver. If you can find that race on YouTube, dude, it is. It was just awesome.
So did you guys run that engine there?
Yeah, because we're at elevation and everything slows down.
Yeah.
So we saved that engine for that race, knowing that we wanted to show up with a heater at elevation. That way our bike wasn't down any.
And when you build a motor that's got that much power, were you worried it would build too much heat at elevation? Because don't they get hot and the fuel will boil and all that kind of stuff?
Typically you can ride them harder as well at elevation, right? Because they're not making the same power. And the quality of the air is different and everything. But no, I mean, we weren't tight on anything. Like I'm a big clearance guy. Sure. So we weren't tight on anything that anything could hit or do whatever. And you can get away with more compression at elevation. It
worked great. Was he stoked on it?
Freaking awesome. It was so good. That was hands down one of the coolest races that
I got to go
stands
back
out.
and watch it now. You got me all pumped on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you finished this season, your second. I don't remember how the Nationals went that year. Do you guys have a good year?
We had an average year at the Nationals.
Okay.
Nothing to really, no super highlights that I can remember.
But I want to say your 250 guys, like you said, they were on the podium both coasts. Like they were competitive. You guys were competitive all the way around that year.
Yeah. Yeah, Jason Anderson won some that year.
Yeah.
Blake Wharton, I think, did. He
Dallas,
was on the podium.
maybe? Yeah, I remember. He had some good rounds.
Yeah, he had some good rounds. He's the world's fastest motorcycle cop. Kind of rides with that like
Yes,
straight
he
up
does. He
style,
does.
riding a Harley mentality, but
So-
he got it done.
At the end of that season, you left and started Twisted Development.
No.
Oh,
So fast forward through, now it's like weird contract time. Not for me, but Suzuki wasn't really like stepping up to be a partner that wanted to do more. The only thing we'd ever got from them, which we kind of had from the year before, was a heavy flywheel.
okay.
So
And just to pull everything together here, at this point, Roger had gone to KTM
Yep.
with Dungy.
yep,
So Suzuki just had their Yosh shop going on.
yep,
Was that still functioning in 2013?
It was.
14? Okay.
yep.
And who
Yeah,
did they
yep.
have? I was trying to remember who they had that year.
What's the guy's name? He came from off road. He was
Mike Webb was it?
Yeah, Mike Webb. Yep.
Mike Webb,
Yeah,
yeah.
he came from off road. He was a off-road team manager, and then he stepped up to run the Yoshimura Suzuki program.
And who was on it there? Do you remember who they had?
Stewart.
Oh, it was Stu. Okay.
Yep. And then Renee Zapata, who was at Rockstar Suzuki before, had went there to be Stewart's mechanic. So he was a
Got it.
key player in the program.
Okay, so what happened at the end of that year? I thought you started Twisted in 2014, but maybe it was later in the year.
So at this point, we were like manufacturer shopping. Suzuki wasn't really going to step up to do any more. They didn't want to get us transmissions or like any of the things that we kind of knew that they had. And at that point too, it's like, if you are the factory team and there's a satellite team with a lot less doing more, like I wish the factory guys would be able to like embrace that and like support them and build them up. But then they're all worried about their jobs and then
Yeah.
outsourcing that. So it becomes like a really interesting situation. So like let's say if Kawasaki puts on a satellite team moving forward and then their guys are doing better than the in-house guys, like how does that look to them?
Not good. Yeah.
Not good. But for the brand, it looks great because they're on a production-based motorcycle and they don't have all the resources. That means that stock bike is pretty good. But that's it's just a weird spot. So it's like if the manufacturers can embrace maybe the satellite guys, it may pendulum switch the course of what the sport is.
Well, I thought kind of during that window, maybe it was 2008 where it started, it was in that window, I thought we're going that way. Factory teams are going to disappear. You know, Yamaha went to JGR, Suzuki went to Rockstar. I thought, okay, you can start to see it happening. Like Cowie had the Jeff Ward Racing team for a minute, and there was another one. Was it
Chad Reed.
Chad Reed's?
Yep.
So you could start to see these, and to me, it made more sense. The manufacturers can give more support to a couple teams. Now there's more rides. Like, why wouldn't we do that? And the only feedback I ever got was, well, we lose control of testing and R&D, which leads to new bike updates and things. And I was like, so have a liaison. Like, it didn't really make sense to me. It's a poor way to do it, in my opinion. If you look at NASCAR or any other type of racing, that's kind of how they do it.
Well, and if you look at it, most of the factories will farm out their satellite, 250 teams. The 250s are just a lot of work. The bikes require a lot more modification, a lot more service, a lot more stuff, and a lot more headache. Really, you're dealing with younger riders,
kids, yeah.
Who can be a challenge. So, like the Geico Honda situation, so like it was probably pretty tough on Honda to have to pull and rein back in that 250 program with the closing of Geico Honda, because now all of a sudden they're having to do a lot more in a competitive market, right? Like 450s are about power management, power delivery, ease of riding. They don't wear you out. You can go faster for longer. All of these things, which are kind of in the wheelhouse of still challenging, but maybe not as challenging of just sheer horsepower that's sustainable and doesn't break.
Yeah.
So it seems like the factories have kind of been okay with the little bikes going out, but there's a lot of pride in the Premier class.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't know if we are headed into a recession, like that will be some of the things that they'll have to do to be able to keep racing at that level. They'll have to start trusting in those situations. So like, but if you look at Toyota, they have a lot of NASCAR teams, but they don't directly own them. They just have found good partners. They provide the technology and, you know, the development of some of the powertrain, and then trust that amongst these high level teams. Yeah. So I think there's still a lot of room for growth within our dirt biking community as well. So
okay. So just let's just get to the start of Twisted Development. When did that happen? And what was your decision after coming off such a successful run with those guys? Mm-hmm. Were you just burned out from being on the road, or like what was the lead up and the decision to say, all right, I'm going to start my own company?
So,
and when did that happen?
Okay, so manufacturer shopping happens, right? And KTM wants to support the team. They like Davey. Carlos is Davey's longtime mechanic, and he's like the backbone of Red Bull KTM, in my opinion. And so he's pushing to have Davey on a KTM, and they said that we'll be able to do development coincide with them, all of these things. And so we switched to KTM that offseason. So Rockstar KTM forms in 2014. So then at that point, I got to do some mapping stuff, but pretty much it was like we had to run the factory stuff. It was on an engine program where I would drop off, pick up the engine, development stuff, you know, scheduling test days, getting the suspension back, getting it serviced. So like I go from really using my brain to minimally using my brain. And more or less like finding time. So like I picked up drawing in SolidWorks, and I wanted to try to grow to be more valuable, to make parts or do something. Like I had that vision. So I did have more time at work again to do those type of things. I would kind of draw some stuff we needed or whatever, and try to learn a new trade per se. And so at the end of in the middle, so we won the championship on the West Coast with Jason Anderson.
2014.
And going into the summer, I got a couple races in, and so they're just kind of like, hey, you know, we're not going to do any development. Like, we can see that, you know, your hands are tied and you're not really doing what you love to do or whatever. So we kind of just made the decision, like, they helped me out. They did pay me through the end of the Nationals. And so that gave me some paid time. And at that time, I was already kind of networking to work with Brian Deegan. I was friends with his crew chief on his truck side. And so he's like, hey, my buddy's starting his own company, whatever. So I was working for Nick Way at that time. He was still racing. I was building his engines from home. I was modifying and, you know, generally doing other things. And then Brian was the one who kind of offered me a little bit of a salary. And that salary was enough to where I could start Twisted Development, take care of everything he needed for Hayden and Haley and Hudson. And then,
so you were building car and kart stuff too, or
yeah, just kind of thrown into the deep of doing whatever. But it's all learning and fun, right? It's like racing. So it was kind of right up a fun alley of learning something new. So it was Brian who was like, dude, I can pay you this much money and you're not going to survive, but I know you'll go get the rest of it. So if you're willing to help me, I need the help. Let's do it. And so at that time,
were you doing that at a home? You didn't get the shop yet at this point.
Right. Okay. So John Duffy, who owned Applied Racing, Triple Clamp Company.
Yep.
He has a track and like a massive red barn out in Awanga. So it was like 30 plus minutes from my house. Okay. So I acquired a dyno. I put it out at his place. So I set my 3-car garage up at home. I put in lights and I, you know, made it like really tidy or whatever. So I was kind of assembling and building engines there, and I was like, this is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. You know, other than the fact that like customers were dropping off and picking up, and my neighbors were just kind of, nobody said anything because it was, you know, it's not like I was running bikes or dynoing at home, but then they'd want to use the bathroom, and then it was just kind of like, oh man, I got to figure something out. Like I got to get out of here. Yeah. So luckily I was able to really crawl slow and kind of work towards the situation rather than just throw right in the deep. So that's the birth of Twisted Development. I had a good customer in Brian Deegan, who was willing to pay me a certain amount of money to make sure Hayden's bikes were fast. We won championships with his daughter building the trophy cart engines. And then
Which is what? Is that a 250?
It's a 450 quad engine. Starts life as that.
Okay.
And then there's a set of rules and stuff like that. So I ended up buying a dyno, a go-kart / quad dyno, so that I could modify those things and kind of control my destiny there. And we were really competitive, and she got to win and get her championship. And, now she's on to NASCAR and everything. So it's just like a small step in her process, which was cool. But it does help, like, credibility wise, like she does go-kart racing. She did those trophy carts, like like she'll race anything with a steering wheel. So that was fun. And obviously she's really competitive, but I always felt like with Haley, it was funny because if there was like whoops or rollers or stuff, like there was no on or off gas to like try to time them. She would just hammer to the rug and just like go left, right, bang everywhere. And so it was like, if you tell her you fix the suspension, she's not going to lift through like the jumps. And so it was, she'd never had that motocross connection of like how to like maybe time them or like on off accelerator. It was just
to the floor
through them. And so it was funny in some of these situations we'd see at the tracks where we're like, Haley, you have to slow down. You cannot hit those rollers that fast.
Okay, I've got a bunch more questions about that. I want to take a quick break. This is our TLD timeout. Stick around. We're going to be right back here to get more with Jaime Ellis. There's a new product on the market that's going to help you with your riding and racing, and it's Elevate Action Sports. If you've not yet gone and checked it out at elevateactionsports.com, it's a collective of riding coaches, the likes of which has never been put together. Grant Langston, Ryan Hughes, Jeff Emick, Johnny Campbell, and myself, David Pingree, bringing all of our years of experience in professional racing to one place with professionally produced videos and all kinds of supporting staff to help you with your mental side of racing, your physical side, your bike setup, your bike maintenance. We cover it all. Get to Elevate Action Sports right now and join the community.
Dunlop. There is a reason every AMA championship in the past decade was won on Dunlop tires. They are the best. Choose the best performing tire and a brand that has never wavered in their support of our sport. Choose Dunlop. Pro Circuit. Pro Circuit products are designed with one goal in mind: winning. Through passion and hard work, Pro Circuit has operated the most successful 250 team in the history of the sport. They use that same formula when developing exhaust, engine, and suspension parts for every brand. When only the highest level of performance is acceptable, trust Pro Circuit.
Since 2009, Seat Concepts has been dedicated to making the best aftermarket seats. More comfort, more grip, more riding. For 10 years, we've continued to raise the bar. Innovation and American craftsmanship make Seat Concepts the world-leading manufacturer of power sports seats.
Something from nothing. That's what Nihilo Concepts is about. It starts with a spark, an idea, a concept, which leads to a design, and finishes with engineered excellence with the highest quality products created with durability in mind. All our products are made in the USA at our state-of-the-art facility in Stuart, Florida. Whether you are a weekend warrior, ride for fun, or at the highest level of competition, Nihilo Concepts offers innovative titanium, aluminum, and carbon fiber parts for your dirt bike. We offer a wide variety of products that you can customize to your liking. Browse our site for foot pegs, brake tips, engine components, specialty tools, frame grip tape, lever grips, carbon fiber components, motor stands, our secondary on-switch, plus much more. Head to NihiloConcepts.com and see for yourself why factory teams like Red Bull KTM, Rockstar Husqvarna, Troy Lee Designs Gas, Orange Brigade, Club MX, KLM Gas, and some of the fastest riders in the world choose Nihilo Concepts.
Specialized Bicycles. Specialized leads the way in the world of bicycling. Whether it's cross-country racing, downhill, e-bikes, enduro, road, gravel, dual slalom, dirt jumping, or all mountain bikes that do it all, Specialized has the perfect ride for you. The brand is synonymous with engineering excellence and innovation that steers the industry. Visit your local Specialized dealer for a test ride and see just how good Specialized products are.
I try to keep on keeping on.
With a rich history in motocross, Pro-X has been dedicated to supplying quality components since 1975. Whether you're rebuilding an engine or just need a new chain, Pro-X Racing Parts aims to bridge the gap between OE quality and affordability. Pro-X has over 9,000 part numbers and over 60 different product types that are manufactured by highly reputable or even OEM suppliers and are offered at affordable prices to help keep riders on the bike instead of in the garage. Visit Pro-X.com to search parts for your bike or check them out at your favorite online or local dealer.
Audio Jungle.
The guys are just breaking in their race bikes, which will leave on the semi this Saturday to go to the first Supercross for our coast in Orlando. So the guys are just be goofing off a little bit, do some cool photos, do some cool videos. When you go racing, you want to do well, but a big key is keeping the bikes on the track. That's why we chose to work with Motul.
Expectations coming in as a rookie is just to try and get my feet wet and honestly just send it, see where I end up and do my best out there, but just ride aggressive and ride like myself in practice and I should have a good time.
Challenges of this sport, I believe, is just simply staying healthy. With how fast we're going and what we're doing, your margin for mistake is really, really small.
Stay Sick. If you have little rippers, then you have had to have seen Stay Sick bikes by now. We have created bike and experiences that allow kids to develop sooner and empower them to find their own ride. From learning to ride to sharpening skills, the Stay Sick promise is accelerated growth. Whatever path your family chooses, it's going to be the ride of your life. Stay Sick Stability Cycles.
I'm on vacation every single day cause I love my occupation. I'm on vacation. If you don't like your life, then you should go and change it.
Welcome back to the Whiskey Throttle Show. That was your Troy Lee Designs Time Out. The boys at TLD have a bunch of new gear out. The paint department's cranking. They got mountain bike gear. Be sure to get over to troyleedesigns.com and look at everything they've got going on. All right, Jamie, jumping back in here. So we kind of covered how you got started with your business and how the Deegans sort of helped you kind of finance that and be able to make it happen. I wanted to ask about running your own business because this is something that has been new to me. Coming out of racing, I went to media and then team management and then the fire service. And so when I started the Whiskey Throttle Show and then now Whiskey Throttle Media, it's been such a learning curve. Fun, but really stressful at times, and I realize there's a lot of stuff I just didn't know about running a business, from the finance end and banking to employees, which is a radical struggle at times, and there's just a lot to it. Did you have, because it doesn't sound like you had experience running your own business either prior.
Oh, actually I did.
Okay.
So there's a small gap. While I worked for the oil company and went to college, I started a motocross school.
Okay.
So in Louisiana, it was called Racer's Edge Motocross Academy. We did private lessons weekly and group lessons. Like I had a handful of like 2-day schools.
Okay.
Where, I think one of our biggest schools, Dement, was riding and I was coaching, and we kind of teamed up on that. So the process somewhat of business, I kind of somewhat understood how to make money, but I definitely didn't understand accounting, taxes, how to, like we have, which most businesses do, is like a resale certificate. And that can get you in a lot of trouble, right? Because you're buying stuff, you're not paying tax on it. So eventually you have to be able to, when you're audited, because at some point everyone gets audited, you have to be able to show where all that money came and went and all that stuff. So I would say that a couple of the books or whatever that I've read is like, in order to have a business, like the technician has to die inside. because you have to do so much more. You know, so it's like if you have an engine building business, if you don't understand business, you should find somebody that does to manage you, even though it's your engine building business. And those people aren't just like around waiting to like help somebody else. If they're smart at running a business, chances are they're probably already running their own.
Yeah.
So it is like, I understand what you're saying as far as like, you know, you're good at building an engine, and now all of a sudden you have to order parts and manage money and whatever.
Yeah, the finances, the personnel, like there's so many things to it. I mean, writing a list of questions for you, it's easy. There's things I want to know. Like I just don't get to sit down. You're too damn busy. I don't get to talk to you for 3 hours at a time. But all the stuff on the back end is it's new to me, right? And so I just imagine the same thing. You had growing pains on the business side.
Yeah.
What was that like? Any challenges specifically?
So I try to never hide it from my customers. I try to be very direct and straight on. It's like, hey man, I have to turn a profit. I don't try to like hide, but
used car salesman.
Yeah. It's like, you know, I can't afford to be in business if I'm not making money, and I can't afford to show up. So it's like I'd say that you poked a nerve right now, because at this moment in time, you know, we started in 2014, so we're coming on 10 years in business. And the way I started the business versus the way that the economy and things are forcing me to trend is ever changing. You know, like whenever we first started the business, doing mapping, doing that type of stuff, you know, we would sell someone an ECU, and, you know, as long as they rode that particular bike, we would make any changes they wanted to that ECU. Where, you know, we've been going to Mammoth Motocross for a really long time. It's like one of my family's favorite races. And we're really close with Myron Short, the promoter, and, you know, he's the X of Bar X. So going up there for as many years as we have, like the costs are higher for the condos this year. The gas to get there is higher. The rate that I pay the mechanics to come with me is higher. And yet, like, people aren't rotating motorcycles as much as they used to.
Yeah.
So this year was a really big challenge. I think it was the first year we haven't at least broke even. And that's going to force some change within the business. So like you said, you know, like you started the business, you had to do accounting to do this, that, and another. And we have to keep track of those wins and losses. Mammoth is a race where it's over 8,000 feet in elevation, and the bikes run genuinely pretty awful. So when we're there to help fix them, we make a new customer because their bike's running bad. They don't want to know me, but they are excited that I'm there to save their vacation of racing motorcycles in God's country of just beauty.
Yeah.
And so, so a lot of times that's one of the ways we've been able to keep up customer engagement is being there. And so this year it was like there was a lot of people that came up, and I'm tuning a lot of the same bikes that I've tuned like 6-8 years ago. And if they have our ECU sticker and whatever, like we tune them, we look after them. But what's happening, in my opinion, because their mapping should have been good from last year. Their bike ran great last year. I don't know what's going on. So it's like I'm tuning a dying fuel pump. I'm tuning valves not sealing. I'm tuning like piston blow by. And I'm like, can I make it better? Yes. But I find as if since we've tuned these bikes 3, 4, 6, 8 years ago, that like I'm doing all of this and I can't generate any revenue for it. So it's like, at what point, if you're a business that isn't making money, you're not really a business. So you have to like come up with some sort of a new strategy, right?
Yeah.
And so this year we are going to change things up a little bit. And so at World Vet, which is another big race that I race and I love doing, and I just love the camaraderie or whatever. Like I'm going to be there every year if I can. We're trying to have this membership program in place, and it won't start effect till January, but it's forced us to kind of come up with some sort of a way of how we can make a little bit of money to keep showing up to events like Mammoth and World Vet and the Fall Classic and like, you know, my kid is heavily into motorcycles now, like I said, so he's going to want to race more. So if I always feel that if I'm at any track, I can be of value. Like if somebody's bike's not working, I can help. And so I think the only thing that we can do is maybe some sort of a membership. Like, you know, you buy an ECU, and this isn't the gospel, but it's like if you buy, I'm trying to come up with the terms of how I can afford to keep showing up.
Yeah.
You know, as Mammoth was a loss for us, my business side of me would be like, hey, you shouldn't go next year. You lost money. But then the passion side of me is like, dude, I'm not going to miss Mammoth. Like, it's my favorite race. I help a lot of people. Like, I'm going to be there. And so this membership thing, if it's $99 a year or whatever, and you're enrolled in our, you know, thing, that'll just kind of help us to show up to more events more often, and not have to justify, well, I'm going to just lose money the whole way or whatever, because it's even in pro racing that, you know, we went to a lot of Supercross this year, and when we build an engine at the shop or do the mapping or whatever, we can't factor going to Florida 5 times in the price. We can't factor going to Indianapolis or, you know, any of those races. So it's like, how do I get to more races and afford to make it there? That's the challenge of what, because I don't ever like to put my hand out, but unless people are calling like, hey man, we really want you to go to Daytona, you know, because, you know, Kenny's in it, like, then they know that they're going to pay something for me to be there. But the other people are just like, oh, sick, you're here, man, come look at my bike. So it's like, I don't know how to get around that. And so I'm going to have to make some changes or figure out some sort of a new process.
And that's business, right? You constantly have to evolve, and it's not like you set a business plan and go, okay, there, we're set. We follow this and we're good.
Yeah.
It constantly changes for a number of reasons. And then on top of that, for me, stress, the pressure, not being home, like you said, you got to be there. You have to be you have to get out and get amongst it and be with at these events. And I'm already gone 12 to 14 days at the fire station away from my family. They don't want to come hang out at the dirt bike track with me. So finding those extra days is like, damn it.
Well, the perfect storm for me is my son, and he's mama's little boy. So
you guys can go as a family.
We go as a family. So it's, you know, if I was a mechanic bringing my kids to Mammoth with me, it'd be like, oh, dude, he brought his kids again. But then when you own a small business like mine, it's like, oh, sick. It's awesome. You get to bring your kids. And they're just happy to see you because you can help them. So I would say that that's such a different viewpoint of the way that I'm doing it right now is the core reason of why we started Twisted Development. It was to spend more time at home, not have to go to every race. I mean, they're going to be 40 races a year in no time between World Supercross, Super Motocross Playoffs, Motocross, Supercross, international races. There's only 52 weekends in a year, and like when you're gone for 40 of them, and that's why like some of the respect I see for these faces that you've been seeing at the races for so long. Like, how many races has Mitch Payton been to?
Well, and he doesn't even go to all of them. There's guys that have been to every race for decades.
Yeah,
at least, you know, maybe they missed one here or there. I don't know how they do it. It's crazy. Well, anyway, I don't want to beat up on that too much, but it's something and when I see a business owner now, I have like a whole new appreciation and respect because I'm like, dude, good for you, man. Like, hang in there. On Two Strokes, I wanted to pick your brain on this. On Two Strokes, you know, like exhausts were super important, right? You
still
could
are. Yep.
Build an expansion chamber and change all these shapes and super intricate pipe building, right? But it really affected the way the bike worked. I feel like Four Strokes aren't as critical, the exhausts.
Well, with sound restrictions, you know,
I guess
like
sound changes it.
To get a pipe that's working really well and passing the sound test is definitely the challenge.
But I feel like now with modern bikes, it's EFI. It's kind of what I mentioned earlier. That the mapping is everything, and what you're doing on the computer.
The one thing I want to touch on that's a sensitive subject, and people probably won't maybe agree with what I'm saying, but I wish that we would do away with the neutral maps. Like, every bike is tested at a certain RPM, and then we race them at another RPM. So for me, like, even an OEM bike now in neutral is only going to rev so far, and you put it in gear, it revs a lot further. So I would love to raise the actual sound limit to what people are realistically running at RPM.
Okay.
That way we're not chancing, like at one of the Supercrosses this year, you know, a rock hit a wire and basically closed the circuit of one of the neutral sensors. So the shift drum has a certain amount of pickups on it, and as it picks up different pickups, it releases a different voltage. So when it's in neutral, it is reading that voltage. So the bike goes to a certain sound map. Well, I think it's a dangerous situation that I wish we could just all get past the fact that nobody is riding the bikes with a rev limiter or where they rev in neutral. Like, not even OEMs are doing it anymore. So it's like we all have this one gauge of where it's like you have to lower that neutral limit to pass sound, but then realistically when you put it in gear, they're going there. So it's like the European spec of, because they push the greenies, right? Push what we have to be for sound for the meadows and cows and everything else. And
cow farts are ruining the planet. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a crisis. So I don't know. I just feel it's one more thing. Like these guys are racing 40 plus weekends a year.
So what's the solution?
The solution is like coming up with an appropriate sound number at a race rev limit. Like, I mean, I don't believe that we should be limited to what RPM you can run or whatever. Like, I think that that's a deadener of the sport. Like that wouldn't be right now. I think our rules are pretty good. Like they're in place to prevent really, really high end money spent outdoing what something that an OEM does. Right. So I believe the AMA has done a phenomenal job on the rule book. Bore stroke, valve angle, like those three things are something that could cost a lot of money and could, you could make your own cylinder head out of billet. You could change everything. Like we got to slow that stuff down.
Yes.
So I think they've done a great job. I don't like the fact that you can endanger a rider from the sound situation. So it's like it's 114, but you're revving it to a minimum RPM, but nobody's racing at that RPM. It's like I'd rather the actual dB be higher and it be a more realistic RPM. That way the safety wouldn't have to be so far of a gap.
Okay.
Like let's say
if you raise the dB, would everyone just automatically push their neutral rev limiter up?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So the lower dB is forcing lower neutral maps, and the tech's having to make sure you're at least revving to that. But you're racing to here. I'd rather see it just be here, and then that way we're not preventing like a, because
have you
let's
spoken
say
to anyone at the AMA about this at all?
I've spoke to a couple people, never in depth, should I say. I just kind of experienced that like could be a problem this year, and so Tool Time is always really cool and listen. So next time I see him, I'll probably have a conversation with him.
Yeah, he would get it.
Yeah,
it seems like he'd be pretty open. So I recently, as you alluded to, HEP Suzuki had their race bike out at Paula, and a handful of us got to ride this thing. And it blew me away. The bike was probably the best 450 I've ever ridden. And I haven't ridden, other factory 450s of modern era, right? I rode old factory two strokes and stuff, but it was incredible. And Brooke said a couple of things to me that were, I thought, interesting and profound. The first thing he said, we're not worried about weight. Because I said, what have you guys done to shave weight off this thing? The Suzuki's heavy, right? Compared to some of the other bikes. And he goes, I'm not worried about weight. He goes, I actually think having some extra weight keeps the bike planted. And I was like, I've never heard anyone say that. I've never heard anybody say that. There's always been we need to get the weight down so it feels lighter, and it's, every, 8 pounds is a horsepower or whatever the number is. And he says, I'm not worried about it because horsepower is not the problem. It's application of power, right? It's the delivery. And that was the other thing that he said was delivery.
The bike is built throughout with all titanium bolts and, lighter stuff. So that's, I think maybe Larry's not worried about it, but the build of the bike is already that way.
Sure.
And he was super weight guy between the series.
Really?
Last year. So, he left Bar X Suzuki, which we'd been together there, I think 7 years. And then he went to HEP. So he was like, man, on like, I don't know.
Well, on a 250, maybe a different story, right?
Yeah.
What weight's more important, weight to horsepower ratio. I think on the 450 is what he meant specifically is we're not worried about dropping weight to try to
Right.
get as much power as we can. We have plenty of power.
Yeah, but the bike is weight conscious for what the bike is, should I say?
Okay.
So I don't want to. So
Yeah, he's not adding lead weights to it. I
Yeah.
get it, but it's not something that consumes him. Like, I've got to lean this thing out.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I'd never heard anyone say that. But I come from the old school where you're trying to get down to the limit,
as light as
right?
possible. Yeah.
And then the other thing that he said was it's not about how much horsepower we can make. It's all about delivery.
Correct.
And this was one of the takeaways, which is your engine package, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I got off and I said, man, there's nothing about it that's like, it never peeled my eyelids back. I was never just going, whoa. It was just incredibly tractable. I felt like it was the perfect amount of power at every RPM range to get as much traction as you could without breaking the wheel loose. And I felt like that delivery also contributed to the way the bike handled, which was incredibly planted and stable. And it pushed you to push harder. That was the best way I could describe it. And I was blown away. And I was just blown away. And I thought, man, I want to ask Jaime if you guys use that power curve as like your template. Like, I want to get every 450 I ever build to, read like this.
Well, there's so many other factors that come into play. So that is a detuned version of kind of what we came up with. We work with Cometic gaskets, they're around. And so we build a really big base gasket for that thing. And the way I design most of our pistons is we'll put a decent amount of compression in the piston in the first stage. And then after that, like, we have a diamond polishing stone wheel, and we can go in and kind of remove some of that compression as needed until we kind of do our dyno testing and kind of figure out where we want to be. So clearances are most important. Nothing can touch, so everything has to be clearanced. And then we put safe compression within it, keeping flame travel to the rings in mind. And then from there, we can lower it back and back and back. So the original engine package was pretty much the same as what it is now, just, a standard size base gasket. And so whenever everybody said the bike was really responsive, kind of just too much, they're riding behind it instead of ahead of it. The easiest thing to do is just take some compression out of it. So a really low compression, high horsepower engine is a really smooth, beautiful thing to ride, because you're not having to pinch so much compression out of it to get it like bound tight. Mm-hmm. And so they all landed on that package because it softened everything and just made it a lot more pliable and manageable. The cool attribute is that some of the media that wrote it said that the bike wasn't very fast. And in fact, the bike is very fast, but the feeling and character it gives you is the magic of what the boys have come up with.
Yeah.
As far as to make that rideability what it is. So that's...
Yeah, to me, it was the perfect amount of horsepower at every RPM. Like,
yep.
More power, you'd just be spinning or going sideways or wheeling, right?
Yeah.
It was like this perfect amount all the way through. I wanted to just tip my cap to you because you guys really came up with something great.
Chisholm's really clever. And then with Kenny, like, Ken is a freak of nature that rides a motorcycle like nobody else. I was actually very concerned what Kenny was going to say about the bike because I had always known how sensitive he was at Honda. Mm-hmm. That I'm like, okay, well, we might have another Millsaps challenge on our hands. But honestly, we were able to hit the nail pretty hard with enough power for him, and then we were kind of able to massage it backwards. And then, Chisholm was like, "Oh, that's way better," and Kenny was like, "Yeah, it's just softer and better." So it's like everybody kind of like fed off of the test of going that direction. And yeah, so Kenny I was a bit worried about just because I know he's really low RPM. Like, he hits a turn so quick and he's to the throttle so early, but he's never airplaning it and revving it in the air and like doing all this crazy stuff. It's just really his own unique riding style. And going back to the stories of whenever Musquin and Kenny were both at KTM, I'd always heard that like Musquin's engines come apart way quicker, like way faster service intervals, just because of the high RPM revs, all of those things. Whereas Kenny would, even on a 250 was so low everywhere, he would just like keep the bike in its happy zone.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he's not on the clutch a lot. It's very in the meat of the power. So Yeah. Easy on the engine builder, I suppose.
Yeah, it's nice. And he goes really fast.
Yes. So what are your goals with the brand, with Twisted Development? Where would you like to see this thing go 5-10 years from now? And then personally, like what goals do you have?
I think the goal for everybody is financial freedom. I'm not there, but that's the goal, right? Like you want to be able to kind of do what you want. So I'd say that fuels the fire of, wanting things, wanting to be able to do things. Like my daughter's in cheer, competitive cheer, which is travel. And, they go to Florida, they go to Atlanta, they go to like all over the place. And so it's like, there's some motivation to make sure I can afford to keep her into something that she's passionate about. Mm-hmm. My son is passionate about motorcycling. So
that's going to break you, buddy.
Even
with the free parts.
Well, that and, but we will have spent a lot of time like going to these cheer events. We have one in Vegas, I think next month, where my mom and dad are going to fly out from Louisiana and we're all going to drive up together and, just spend time and whatever. And it's like, I always tell my kids that I want you to raise your kids the way that we're raising you. Like, don't forget about these things that are, financial hardships and effort and whatever. And like going back to you and your dad riding, like my dad never really pushed me per se, because he was just like, come home safe, son, I love you. And so whenever I go to the line, like I heavily just think about him the entire time. It's like, I just want to be that positive influence that isn't like cussing my kid out because he didn't clear the tabletop.
Yeah.
So I believe that. But yeah, so those are the things. I am a Louisiana boy at heart, and I know I cannot run my business from Louisiana. I do think I could maybe survive, but it'd be a lot harder, right? Like we're in the mecca of motorcycling. So I kind of thought if I started this business in California, if I can't make it here, I probably won't make it like somewhere else. Mm-hmm. However, my overhead's higher here, everything. So the next stage is we're going to be opening a location in Florida.
Oh.
That's already in process. Like I bought a Sprinter van. I sent myself a motorcycle out there so I can start racing some of the races. And
is that the Honda 250?
No, I still got to get rid of that thing. Wageman rode that bike at Mammoth. He said it was the fastest bike he ever rode at Mammoth.
Yeah.
Which is funny. But yeah, so I do want to venture into Florida. California, I think, is first place for the amount of days we can ride. And then Florida, between the sun and the sand and the opportunity, like rich vet guys kind of mold the sport, in my opinion. Like that's what keeps us open. So like they'll come down from Canada to California on ride days or whatever, and then they'll spend some money, and they're doing the same thing from New Jersey. They're flying down Friday and they're riding Saturday and Sunday in Florida, and they're going back when it's cold. So it's like I kind of want to set myself up to support the vet community in those areas, because then maybe I can start that same business model there.
Sure.
And then just kind of be able to crawl a little bit in Florida. So that plan is happening. I've always planned on being in California, and I also want to start. So we have a really good partner in our Florida location that's highly credible. He's built Ken Roxon's engines for the past 2 years, or past year, let's say. So he's going to be taking off and running that Florida location for us, and I'll be like kind of transferring back and forth, and
awesome, and
hopefully kind of plan to buy a house there and maybe implement ourselves with a living back and forth in the two best motocross communities there are.
Kids complicate that though, right? Because once they get locked into school, hard to pull them out.
Nope, that they do, and they're in homeschool now. It's teacher led through the government, so they're not like in paid homeschool. Not that I think there's anything wrong with that, but just my wife just talked me into it. I think she likes like the teacher aspect of like being at home to help them some and whatever. Because through COVID, it's pretty much the same thing they're doing now.
Yeah, is it like a charter?
No, it's through the school system.
Okay.
And so they're from 8 to noon. They have to be on with the teacher, and they're in. So they actually get a little bit more of attention than maybe they are in a class of 30, because I think there's 15 kids. I think the popularity of that situation is going to grow, and our kids are social enough. Between my son plays travel baseball, and he's going to be racing motorcycles.
Yeah.
So that's a conundrum of showing up to practices and doing those things, and and him wanting to go to Paris mini night on Wednesdays. And so he's going to have to make some decisions in the future. But right now we're just managing and juggling both. And then my daughter does cheer 4 nights a week. So, I mean, it's like 9:30 pickup, 2 nights a week. And then, so we're shuttling kids more than we're not. And that is going to be the hard part of that moving back and forth situation, is they are very active in sports. Like in motocross, my son and I can just go. He can still do his schoolwork or whatever, but for cheer, you have to show up in person, and they're working on these, elites and all these other things. So, yeah, I don't know what the future holds. I know that I like Florida. I know that I like California. I'm like gonna stay sturdy to both. And
now there's huge tax benefits to having that be your primary place of business, right?
Yeah, I don't know everything there is to know about that. That's not really the primary focus as of now. Like, that's going to be a benefit of, building the business in 2 locations. And then, ultimately, if I have another location in mind in Texas. So if I could get 3 locations firing with TD spec parts, I think we have 5 dynos now. So if I could just place a dyno in, California, Texas, Florida, and then have authorized service centers going between those guys, selling parts, building the brand. I'm primarily the one doing the mapping. So like I would want to maybe create like tune days where I have enough bikes lined up, warranted to be able to go in, and then I just hammer them all out, go testing, customer engagement, whatever. That's kind of the vision I guess I see for myself, is to be able to set these people up. You can't really work on a business when you're working in a business too much. I don't know if you've heard that before.
I haven't. That's brilliant.
But I definitely want to keep working on the business and rely on key partners to help have growth and sustainability.
Yeah, that's awesome. That sounds like a really good plan. I think all engine builders have experienced failures, engine failures. Mm-hmm. I always felt bad for mechanics when I'd have a bike break. When I was managing Troy's team, we had a valve let go with Christian Craig, and he broke his back. And that was one of the heaviest things I ever had to deal with. Our engine guy, it beat him up pretty bad. It was well within its service interval hours, and just sometimes shit happens, as you know.
Yeah, it's the worst feeling in the world.
Is there 1 or 2 that stick with you where you're like, man, what the hell happened? And there's a huge responsibility that you guys have. And I don't want to say responsibility, but a sense of responsibility. If a bike breaks at the wrong time, a guy can get really jacked up.
Yeah.
Christian broke his back. Thank God he's okay now, but
that's hands down the worst part. And to be honest, like that situation is something that'll push you to, like, with age comes a cage. It's really nice whenever a car breaks and it hits the wall and nobody's hurt.
Yeah.
I would say that is the worst possible part. And then, like, really kind of, no matter how good you are, can question, do you want to really do this anymore? I try to take that as motivation to turn down jobs that we can't do all of what we need to do. I try to prevent that as much as possible. And sometimes people won't like the outcome. Like on some engines, I'm not going to modify them if we can't put a connecting rod or what. So it's like, I'm fortunate enough to be in a place where we can turn down some work. Mm-hmm. Can't turn down at all, otherwise we just go out of business. But I can pick and choose on not wanting to do that job if they aren't willing to do this to it. They don't align as our customer. So I would say that's how we try our best to prevent all of the common known failures that are OEM specific that can happen, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes OEM valves break, sometimes OEM rods break, sometimes the springs aren't stiff enough, or whatever. So I would say throughout the years and building this stuff, that's the worst potential situation that somebody could get hurt on an engine that you modified. Whether it could have happened stock or modified, it's still terrifying.
And I've been pushing this for the longest time, and I don't think it'll ever happen. We're just too far gone, and Supercross is too influential. If we could go back to having some old school motocross tracks that were just elevation, good dirt prep, and leave the jumps kind of out of it or mellow, they all happen on the jumps. That's all the injuries,
Yeah.
99% of them. But
yeah, we just built a 23 KTM 350, and it's about 10 horse up from the stock 350. And it was another one of those let's go moments, where you're just excited about the build and whatever. And so, and on our dyno, it's about 5 horse better than a stock 450 power wise.
Wow.
And so that really is like, we had fun building it. We got to use our brain, and the output was freaking awesome. So then you're like, man, when you say 450s and hurting people or whatever, like the amount of torque we're able to put in these 450s, let's say that this 350 is like 8 foot-pounds torque less mod than a really mod 450, is the torque is what because horsepower pulls and torque pushes. So whenever you push out of a turn to jump 3, you know what I mean? That's torque. Horsepower is like more after the torque area where the bike is still climbing and going down the start straight. That can get you a better start. So like the appetite for the best start is you'll see some of the bikes that maybe aren't the fastest on the bottom are torque, but they have high horsepower, low torque. They get out of the gate efficiently, and then they pull really well through the RPM range. So I would love to see a 350 style engine where you're having to try hard to jump some of the jumps. 250Fs like make all the jumps now pretty much, right? There's like a crazy 450 moment where you don't know if it's the bike or the talented rider on the 450. Like that quad that they stepped up at the Coliseum was insane. Nobody on 250 did it because maybe there was some sort of a horsepower breach or just craziness of the guys that did it. But the 350 concept I always thought is an interesting topic because you still get to kind of build them and make them fast. And when you do, they're plenty appropriate to be a next level up from a 250. So I don't know. What do you think a series on 350s would be like?
Yeah.
Less injuries? Or?
I think we overshot it with the 450. And kind of one of my questions coming up here is about the electric movement. And so I don't know that they would make a change, even if everyone got together and said 450 is too much, we need to go down.
Yeah,
I don't know if the manufacturers would do it. I'm not sitting in those.
Too much to do it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I want to ask about handling as it relates to engine building. Right? If like I said with Kenny's bike, that power was so smooth, and I just wondered, is this all just chassis and suspension that made that bike handle so well? Or does the engine character add to that?
No, I believe it's a whole package. With the engine rotating mass and everything kind of being right, that's whenever you can have a neutral feeling bike that doesn't like. We've tested heavier cranks in the RMZ 450, and it feels like when you go into the turn, it goes in really deep and then unloads. So there is a lot of balance between the gyro that's happening inside the engine. Having the right amount of mass, the right clutch. Like Kenny's bike uses a slipper clutch, which even the guys at Hinton were like, man, I can't believe they just told the world. And they're like, whatever, this is what we're using. Knowing that you guys would maybe feel something in the lever and the freeness of the bike. But it's like all those little things. Kenny will test from sun up to sundown to chase something that he wants. And I'll admit that he can be cranky until he finds it. And after he actually finds it, he like falls off the face of the earth in happiness. And then he's, like he wanted what he wanted up until this preseason. And we figured it out with a couple key components between the electronics and the hard parts and whatever. And primarily, the attention to detail of having a suspension guy close. So that's another thing of meaning like, do you just send your stuff out to a company in Texas, or do you have, a local guy in Montana, like you grew up, go to the track with you and like dial it in? Like, what's better? That's the age-old question, right?
I've always said it's better to have a guy that'll work with you.
Yeah.
Give me A-kit stuff, but just generically valved. You're not going to like that as well as stock stuff that somebody, whatever engine builder, right?
Yeah. Race
tag or whoever goes out with you and really works with you to get it dialed in.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion.
Yeah. So that's kind of the same thing. Like we spend a lot of time going out to Florida and working with him, Larry Brooks went out there a bunch. Matt went out there. You know, he's from there, the active ride guy. So I don't know how many times that the shock comes off. Like, because with Kenny, I mean, you can only do so much clickers. Like, you're going to go into his shock to probably do equivalent to what you could do to get the clicker range back to where you want it. And so, yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Interesting to see how the dynamics of everything, but the showing up and the attention to detail is kind of what separates.
Yeah. When two strokes kind of were killed off with the four-stroke movement, I had a conversation with Mitch, and he said we were kind of at the peak of what you could do with a two-stroke. I mean, we can little things here and there. We might have gotten another half a horse maybe out of a bike. He goes, but we kind of had maxed out. Mm-hmm. Where do you think we're at with four strokes right now?
Well, for the past 10 years, we've been in the same peak horsepower range. The production stuff has gotten a lot better. I would say that, like, back in 2008, whenever we were a Kawasaki team, our race bike was probably like 2 to 3 horse slower than a production KTM is today.
Is that right?
You know what I mean? So, like, as far as I think whenever all the OEMs originally released everything, they all kind of had like a window that they needed to be in performance-wise to be released. And then technology and everything advances. So the most advancement in technology has been on the OEM side more so than the
pro racing
side.
So do you think that production still has room to improve?
Of course.
Significantly?
Yeah. Like, production-wise, you can't really go too high compression because you don't know where these bikes are going to be ridden.
And the fuel.
And everything else. So they have to stay in a safety window. So, like, the real pioneers are the production guys because they can't just, like, tighten compression up and change the ports and do all this stuff. They have to do it within a molding cost that doesn't drive the price up every time they come up with something.
Yeah.
So, like, the KTM exhaust flange is a prime example. If you type in the part number for the 23 KTM 450 exhaust flange, you can see every year it fits in the where used thing. And it fits like a ton of models, right? So if you are KTM, and nobody's told me this, I'm just assuming a lot of this, so on the record for that. But if you are KTM and you are the engineer for the 450 project, you do the port, you design everything, you know, then it has to go into a casting phase to get the port from the design to a casted mold, because it has to, you know, you can't do billet everything. Like, They got to pour the stuff, and then, you know, you do the machine work to make it fit, whatever. And then you finish your port, but then, like, you have to use this exhaust flange because it's already built. Mm-hmm. It's a line item within the system that already exists. So technically your port will go out to nothing. It just chops off. The aluminum does. So we can find those little areas where we can make the exhaust flange finish the port, and that creates a lot more velocity and connection and stuff like that.
And you can pick up one of these flanges at Twisted Development Racing. TDRacing.com.
No, but I said all
you guys
that
do
to
sell
say,
them. I know that's I just read something where you were talking about that.
So they have to leave us these little victories, right? So that's the area where we get to participate to bring things to market that, like, it's not KTM's fault. Like, the engineer is doing what he's told. You know what I mean? If he actually raised the price of the motorcycle, they can't raise retail every year. So at some point, this is going to have to come off their cost margin, and then they're a business. So
my follow-up to this, and it ties right into what you're talking about, the aftermarket having these little areas where they can come in, exhausts and pistons and et cetera, et cetera. Electric is making a push right now.
Yep.
Send your hate mail to Twisted Development at
Ask Ping.
This is such a divisive topic, dude. Yeah. I tested the Varg recently, and man, half the comments are just, I'm done with motocross if this is where we go. And, you know, I said in the video, I said, look, I didn't want to like it. I don't believe electric cars are saving the environment. I think it's a bunch of horse shit. I think that they're just as bad for the environment as anything else when you look at lithium, and I just don't buy it. However, I said, take all of that out of it, and let's just talk about performance. Mm-hmm. That freaking bike blew my mind.
Yep.
We talk about torque. The stuff I could jump from a dead stop, because there's no rotating mass, the ability for that thing to turn directions, 80 horsepower, like it's not even rideable. You have to tune it down. You can't. It's hard to ride at 80 horsepower.
Yeah.
That is a company that's never built a motorcycle before. What's Honda? What's Yamaha's going to be like? You know they have them. So, I listen, I have the same concerns everybody does. What is a race going to sound like with these things? Like, this is going to be, stupid. I like the smell. I like the sound. I like the vibration. That's part of the visceral experience of motocross. But like Keith McCarty told me, he goes, future's happening, advancements is happening. You can either get on board with it or, or not. Where do you see this, man? Because it seems like the door's been kicked open.
I'd say maybe I'm naive. I really, really, really enjoy the KTM e-bike. My kid started on one. My kid was kind of a quiet kid, didn't really like loud noises. He had a PW50, never really took to riding, whatever. Those things are kind of old and outdated. They're heavy. The kids are small. Like, there's some room for growth in that market, but they still race them really hard, the kids. So clearly he could have just been better, but for whatever reason, he didn't like the KTM gas bike that much. He called it the tickle machine, and it was really loud. But so we got him an e-bike, and he primarily learned to ride, and he still rides that thing every day in the backyard. Like, we have a little pump track in our backyard, so he rides it. Doesn't really bother the neighbors. They don't hear it. I make him water so there's no dust. Like,
yeah,
kind of he's just back there getting it, right? So,
which is, how cool is that?
Yeah. So it has created a lot of opportunities. So, like, the thing that I do love about e-bikes is the fact that I see firsthand the benefit of how it can help to grow the sport. So my kid learned to ride the e-bike, and eventually I was going to Paris mini night with an e-bike, a generator, a KTM 50, and gas for the generator and for the e-bike. So I'm just like, what am I doing?
That's a lot to load up, buddy.
It all made sense in my life, because we were racing this e-bike, and you can only ride it for so long. Like, that sucks. So he would burn the battery out of it, and then I'd pull the generator to plug the thing in, and then he would, have to ride the tickle machine because it'd be boring. You'd be beached there all night. So he would ride the tickle machine, but then he would really, I would see him jump more jumps on his e-bike because of the linear smoothness, everything, where like tickle machine would have a clutch that would hit, and, the power band would come on, and it could, so like at such a small level, I believe the e-bikes, because I'm a big grow the sport guy, right? Like, I can make more money and survive and not have to find a new career if the sport continues to grow, and I want that for the sport. So with that being said, I saw firsthand the progression of no noise, a controllable power to where I could tune it back for him. He could ride the thing wide open, and then if I'm standing in front of him and he's riding it wide open, I could catch him, and it wouldn't hurt me or him. So like, I could prevent a big event from him running into a fence or something stupid like that. So I really like that aspect. And then as they get better, you can do that. So the electric motorcycle market, I believe, is great for the entry level. And then when you actually get the bug of riding, it's difficult to keep an e-bike with a battery in it, because the battery connection is so important when you're jumping and shut-offs and stuff like that. So like, KTM has chosen to not put a interchangeable battery in theirs. That could be something they decide to do in the future with a Bolt or something. I don't know. But as of now, you can only ride it for so long. And then by that time, if you've gotten the bug for riding and you're excited about it, like, your progression to a gas bike isn't that big of a deal, and then you can ride that thing all day. So I love the get people riding with safe experience, and the mobility of where you can learn to ride them, isn't like, people call it cops primarily, in my opinion, based on noise.
100%.
When you are annoyingly loud and you're riding a two-stroke in a field next to your house or whatever, like, they're going to get annoyed. Like, they don't want to hear it. So it's like that e-bike does create some sort of a rural suburban learning experience that isn't available.
Yeah.
You know, like, should you be riding in every neighborhood? No, I get that. But bottom line is it's happened in everywhere across the world. So I see that as a super positive. And then I see a big gap. Like, you see the Surons and stuff, which are, you know, the Roar, everything. They're like, those guys are offering a whole different experience and creating primarily a different problem for police and stuff like that, because they don't know how to police.
There's a wild pack of them in my neighborhood, and I kind of laugh when I see them, but they're doing wheelies and they're doing 40 miles an hour down the road, and they're ripping up on banks, and I'm just like,
yeah. So
I like them out having fun, like, that's rad, but
yeah,
I get, you know, it is a whole new set of problems.
There's like a class 1, class 2, and class 3. I think Suron or Talaria and Roar, they all fall into class 3. So class 1 electric is going to be like your mountain bike, pedal assist, up to 18 to 20 miles an hour. And then I'm not sure the other classification, but I know that having fun
3
on
is a throttle.
Bike,
yeah.
So I kind of think, I'm like, man, what is a class 1 that's really light and jumpable? And like, because whenever you're on a mountain bike trail on one of those bikes, douche, right? Like, you're going to ruin these guys' mountain bike trails. So they get real sensitive, and then you're out in the middle of nowhere and these guys are arguing. And so I don't know, like, what is the happy medium of that? That's an interesting situation. Okay, so there's that market, and then you go right into rich vet guy, white beard, sprinter, factory edition market, which is a Stark at the entry level price. I mean, are they 15 grand?
14 grand, yeah.
Okay, so now
which is really the cost of a factory edition orange bike, right?
So it's just a different market. So I guess that those guys are kind of like like the guys that want the electric bike are kind of pioneering that stage, are wealthy already, right? Like, how much could the sport grow if everybody had to buy a $15,000 motorcycle? It'd be a little tough. So that's my naiveness, is like, I don't feel so concerned yet over what that is. And then knowing that the lighter you make a bike, the battery life is going to shorten and shorten and shorten. So like, we'll probably see a 65 cc, like you saw that the one Granger has that 110 pit bike or whatever. My kid rode one for a while, loves it, thought it was awesome, you know, but he's riding it in areas where nobody can hear him because it's quiet. So I don't know. I think that it does open up a lot of potential situation to where you can go where you couldn't normally go that would bother someone.
Well, and the writing's on the wall. Like, Stasic has done a phenomenal job. I think that's one of the most innovative products our sport's had in 10 years or more, because from a very, very young age, you get these kids hooked on the throttle, right? And then now that steps up to the mini bikes, and by the time those kids are ready for a 60, 65, whatever, it's a tickle machine. They don't like it. They want to stick with the, you know, so they're going to be ready for it. And I think we're already there. I think those kids already exist. And they're begrudgingly making the jump to, you know, gas bikes. And my concern is the integration into pro racing and racing at large. I'd love to see it be its own class. Just be its own class.
The tough part about that is, like, you can do that on a local level, but at the highest level of Supercross and stuff like that, you're going to have these heroes that we have to build into heroes so that they're brandable and they can make a living doing what they love. So it's like, you know, oh yeah, but he was on an e-bike, you know what I mean? So you can't really...
This is the problem, the integration. And like in Canada and Australia, they've already got regulations set up. They're going to allow them in Australia this year. There's a series in Europe, I can't remember where, that's allowing them. And they've just basically set up horsepower parameters, saying, 65 for the 450 class, 45 for the 250 or whatever it is. I already got a whole pamphlet from the VARG guys.
No, I think there's room. You know, I mean, I think if people are riding motorcycles and they're enjoying what they're doing, we're working with RAR. They let us have the software and everything to be able to control the ECU of the electric bikes.
Okay, so this was my next question.
No, I don't want to get left behind. I still think there's a riding experience that needs to be adjusted. There's, you know, the engine braking feeling. There's the, you know, like the torque is going to be the biggest problem. Like with the minimal stuff I've seen on the Stark, the throttle mapping and the releasing of torque is going to be heavy for the user experience. So it rides kind of like a dirt bike does now, you know. And that is the benefit of an electric motorcycle, is because you can hold back the electricity and release it in a certain range as you want. So like the equivalent to an electric dirt bike is the throttle by wire combustion engine. So like if you go 60% throttle really quick, it can meter to get up to 60% or not even 60% or whatever. So eventually, as the electric market grows, the combustion market will continue to develop towards throttle by wire.
You think so?
They'll kind of have to, because right now you can buy one Stark Bark, you can start off as a beginner, and you can slowly increase your way to become a better rider, because you can wood the thing wide open and it can only go at a moment's pace. So that is leveling up the sport of motocross quite a bit from, like, if you're...
One bike is basically a 125, a 250, and a 450.
Exactly.
With a slide of a little button on your dash.
And there comes some respect with that too, right? Like you see, I mean, the thing can torque-wise flip out from under you with the wrong mode setting. But in the right hands, that one motorcycle can achieve what 125, 250, 350, 450, they all can do. So that being built into the one bike and the electric release of electricity will force a 450 to eventually be throttled by wire, so that we can do the same thing electrically with a combustion engine.
Can you explain it? Because they told me that this thing was fly by wire, or throttle by wire.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I don't even know what that means, but it sounds a little sketchy. Like
it
if
is.
This fails.
It is. And so that's why it's not.
And even Nick Way brought this up when he wrote it. He said, I want a clutch on it just in case something goes sideways. I can pull that in and kill the power. Because right now, if something sticks, I'm 80 horsepower headed straight to whatever's in front of me.
Exactly.
And I got no way to shut it off other than to try to stomp on the brake.
Okay, so what throttle by wire basically is, so like we did the flat track stuff for Briar Bauman this year, and he was riding a KTM 890 and 790. So the 890 is a really powerful machine, and instead of having throttle cables that open the throttle body, there's an electric servo. And so when the throttle cable, just like a Stasic, when the throttle cable turns open, it releases more voltage, more voltage, more voltage. And that's telling the ECU where the actual throttle position is. So now the ECU takes that information from the electric thermostat or rheostat, and then converts that into what it's going to tell the mechanical engine, the servo, on the throttle body to open or close. So a good example, we off-road truck racing with Deegan. Haley was going into the Pro Light. And so for years it was carbureted engines, and you can make as much power as you can. You had to be within this board and stroke, blah, blah, blah set of rules. And then the series mandated, I think it was LS2s, a crate motor from Chevrolet, because to make the equivalent power as that one homologated truck engine, they could run this LS2 and control it to basically, when you're wide open, it was only getting to 50% throttle. So it matched the same power output and increased reliability dramatically, because now you're only able to open the throttle halfway. So you're not using the potential of the engine.
Right.
So like you're racing the thing, you're freaking wooding it out of the turns, but it's only allowing itself up to 50%. So if you take that same philosophy and you apply that to a 450 dirt bike, a brand new rider goes wide open right off the rip. If you were in certain select mode, the throttle would actually only open 10% or whatever you chose. So then now, you're walking at the pace of being wide open, which would, at that point, would be a competition to what you can do with an electric situation. So street bikes have been throttled by wire for years. So Breyer's bike is a lot the same. Flat track is a little bit difficult because, a lot of times you think you want traction control, but then yet you have to spin the wheel to get over the bumps and holes. So like you kind of want to like wick the thing up in the turn sometimes and like get through some of the holes with the wheel spinning so it doesn't actually hit the chassis and fall in each one of them. So the algorithm of how you open the throttle and that type of stuff is all manipulatable based on, a 3D curve, throttle position versus wheel speed versus everything else. So You don't want that when you're going to jump a Supercross triple. You
No.
want to open and close cables and trust that that's going on.
So how reliable are these things though? Airplanes are fly-by-wire, right? So I mean, this is not new technology, but to me, that seems like a lot of crap that could fail. If I've got a cable that I'm controlling right here, that's pretty reliable to me. That feels good.
Yeah. And ultimately, you know, a lot of times the soap is what gets in, you know, when you have corrosion, sometimes the soap and the connectors and stuff like that is what can create some sort of a circuitry and stuff. So, so insert dirt, mud, sand, pressure washing, which isn't really ideal for motorcycles, but we have to do it. And then, you know, more electronics. It's not really the direction I believe the sport should go. But to compete, you know, you have all of those things on the electric bike, right? You have soap, you have pressure washing, you have connectors. So it'll just be on how safe they can make those things in the future. But so just kind of said all that to say, like, if we were going to compete with the electric market with combustion engine, we're going to have a way, because just taking ignition timing out of something isn't going to.
It doesn't make a 450 a rideable beginner bike.
Correct.
Yeah, it kind of goes along with what I was saying about like how much more development is there at the manufacturer level, and so you think that's maybe something, the throttle by wire is maybe something that we'll see. Well,
and if you look at it, like KTM, which I'm really proud of, made a really big stance. Like, yeah, we got an electric bike. We don't really care about that right now. You know, they could have put one foot on top of the other, being the pioneers. Like they're the engineering masterminds behind pushing the sport for the OEM bikes to elevate as far as they do, in my opinion. Like people might not like this, but the new KX450 is the most Austrian-looking motorcycle that I think we've seen yet, coming with Brembos and, you know, a boltless air filter system. You know, like they're taking on the hydraulic clutch, like a lot of the stuff that the KTM has been forward thinking about. And to be honest, it's one of the motorcycles I'm really excited about to see this year. It's like kind of like a Japanese twist on the Austrian brand. And it's like, you can't look the other way to what they're doing, because they're leading a lot of development and, you know, winning a lot of the hearts of people riding motorcycles.
Well, and it's an incestuous industry where, you know, every manufacturer has every other manufacturer's bike, and they go out and test against it. And in fact, I was talking to some of I don't know if I should even say this, but they share parts. Like, hey, dude, our bike, we broke this, you know, and they'll, oh yeah, here, dude, I'll send it to you. Like the different people in different camps. And I go, that is wild. But like, okay, I get it.
Well, they're all like-minded people.
Yeah.
You know, they're all motorcycle people, and, you know, we help each other, and it just is the way it is. It's like, you're going to need something from them, and
it's a small family. It's just funny to hear, right? Like, anyway, I don't want to say too much to get myself in trouble. So how do companies like Pro Circuit, FMF, Twisted Development, and you, like you said, the mapping or programming or whatever you call that sort of ties into what you're doing now with electronic, you know, fuel mapping ish, I guess. That's the way I see it. Maybe like the way that, is it? I don't know. You tell me. I'm just trying to figure out how. I asked Mitch, I said, if we go electric, what happens? He goes, I think I'm out. Because I already made one transition to 4-strokes. He goes, what am I going to do? You know, like stay in it just for suspension. And he kind of was just like, I don't know. I think I'm out. That scared me. I thought, think of all the companies that make pistons, that make, you know, engine performance parts, exhaust, like they're all, that's a hit.
And the thing you have to think about is like the 2-stroke is still evolving. It's not dying. That new KTM line, the EFI, we should have wrote those things off whenever Mitch said that we switched to 4-strokes, right? Like at that time, he was like, man, I didn't know if I wanted to do it, and I kind of had to. It's my business. 2-strokes are alive and well, and vintage bikes, to your point, are alive and well. So I believe that as the electric market takes off, and maybe there are going to be people who graduate engineering school for electronics alone who are going to be able to surpass what I can learn through the electronic market, or I mean, we're not there yet, so I don't know how we'll approach that situation. But I do think that there will be a generation that have ridden combustion engines for long enough and still will build them. There's a lot of companies that do restoration projects of late 50s cars and stuff like that, and then they're at a high end level. So I believe we still survive. I don't believe the electric's going to put me out of a job. I'm not going to be opposed to electric. I want to be able to get in and figure out, new stuff with how the energy releases versus throttle movement versus all of these things. And so as that comes, I think me already being on the electric side of EFI and that stuff, I'm hoping that like carburetors gave me a heads up to the EFI stuff, that will fuel injection and controlling electronics help me to relate to those things. So it's like I said, the mechanic who was a good rider can relate to the rider at the time if he kind of feels what they feel. And that's one of the things I'm lucky about, is that I still love riding, so I rode on Saturday with my kid all day and I get to feel these things. So I'm going to want to feel those things then as much as I enjoy it now. So
I'm going to give you $1 million idea. Just give me 10% if it takes off. Build something that makes noise, that makes a motorcycle sound, that can be somehow adapted onto those electric
So when you
bikes.
rode the bike, was it that bad?
It sounds like an RC car.
There's still like a zzz.
That's it. It's just it's an RC car. That's what it sounds like. Now, I'm telling you, I had a blast on it. I was laughing under my helmet. I couldn't believe it.
Put a deck of cards in the spokes or something.
And then even from a safety perspective, dude, I'm zipping up on people. They can't hear me.
Yeah,
they can't hear me at all. That's scary a little bit. You know what I mean? They go to turn off the track, and I'm coming by, and we're gonna have guys getting hurt.
So you need one of those like rear view mirrors with the lights that light up, so you can tell when somebody's gonna pass you.
Isn't there a charger? There's some cars that have like electric. They've got some type of sound system in them that it's electric car and it makes the noise, right? Or
Yoshimura did like some sort of a speaker joke a while back. Whenever all the electric bikes came out, they're like, "Buy the new Yoshimura speaker system."
I'm telling you, joke all you want. Someone's going to make that, and we're going to need to do it from a safety perspective alone. And you don't want to hear just your tire spinning in the dirt. It's not cool.
Yeah, but you remember like 4-stroke nationals, like those guys were kooks.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
think about that evolution of where we are today with the badass dudes riding 2-strokes. Like, that's cool. But it's like, back then, those guys were nerds riding on XR 400s, trying to like make them race bikes, Like, think about where we are now. So evolution has to happen. You can either be a part of it or not.
Well, I hear you. I don't know. It's just tough. I'm telling you, it's just tough. I just can't imagine a supercross race. And I've even thought like, okay, well, maybe you have a DJ and it's music playing and
you can hear the music.
Yeah, you can actually hear the announcers talking. I don't know. Maybe that's cool. It's so hard for me. And maybe I'm an old man screaming at the clouds and yelling at kids to get off my lawn. But it just seems really tough for me to imagine.
No, but there's guys like you that are going to still want dirt bikes.
I'm not a guy.
I'm not saying electric isn't real, but like, let's say traditional. There's going to be guys that want traditional dirt bikes, right?
Yes.
So those guys are typically probably going to be well off because they've been working most of their life to get what they want. So I think they'll support the combustion business for a really long time. I mean, the passion that people have for vintage bikes is unreal.
I agree.
So I don't think that it's a problem.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not hating on electric. It is really fun. And people that say, I'm done riding, if that's what we go do, I just say, hold off till you ride one. Just keep your comments to yourself till you ride one, because it'll change your opinion. There is a safety factor. And then the batteries thing. If you're a dual sport guy, you're a off-road guy, it doesn't work. Like, we're going to have to stay with gas because they can't go 3 hours.
Yeah.
And you can't swap batteries. Yeah. So
there'll be some limitations. And like I said, I think that the weight of the motorcycle versus the size versus the battery will always be a challenge to get them into the 85 market. You know what I mean? Like the KTM e-bike 50s, like a lot of them go into limp mode at Loretta's.
Is that right?
And also too, like your phone, like think about how phenomenal your phone is. You charge the thing once a night and then it lasts all day for the most part, but then over time it slowly gets worse. And then we're going to need someone to be able to like monetize and see, okay, your battery's at this percentage, or I don't know if that's built into the Stark system, or I don't really know a lot about them, but those type of things are going to die over the years slowly. And is it like a charge cycle thing, or is it like
it's hours or a 250 cycles, I want to say, or something like that. 250 and 500 hours or 700 hours. It was something like that. And a new battery is $7,000.
Yeah. That's
tough. That's tough for resale. Like there's some hurdles they still have to get over.
Yeah, but my wife has a hybrid car, which I believe is the wave of the future. I don't really completely believe in all electric. I think that if there is some regenerative braking energy that we can take advantage of to make cars go further, it's like, that's all, that to me is practical. That's not even, so like her hybrid car, it's a 2012 Toyota Camry, and we haven't had to change a battery. We haven't do anything. She just experienced putting gas in it and more miles per gallon.
Yeah.
That's genius. You don't have to like upgrade your charging grid or do all this crazy stuff. It's like, I think that there'll be a niche market for electric cars like there are electric bikes. There'll still be combustion cars because, I mean, you can put a bucket of gasoline in anything and go where you want.
Yeah.
There's no waiting. There's no special charging station. Why the electric cars don't have solar panels, I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but that just seems like if we're able to get energy that way, like, wouldn't we try? There's all these little things that like are gonna continue, but it's kind of like KTM only releasing what they have now. They have to slow play and roll more out to keep like.
Yeah, they're planning out their technological advances.
Yeah,
5, 6, 8
who
years.
knows?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, at least 4 or 5. I know that. You've worked with a lot of racers over the years, and I'm not going to ask stories about the worst ones, but who are some of your favorite guys to work with and why?
Nick Way was one of them. I really liked him just because he always had a bit of comedy with him and was always like kind of had some angle of something. Millsaps was rewarding because what we put into him, we got back. Kenny obviously brought us some of our best achievements. But however, like I haven't had to have a lot of engagement with him. Like the bike has been pretty solid, pretty good. So I would say that I'm happy of our current relationship, but I was ready to do way more. So that was kind of like the situation I'm in with Ken. Winning Motocross of Nations as like an individual rider was a huge accomplishment for a small company. And then the 450 Supercross, like we've won some before under the Rockstar toolage, but not under like the Twist development thing. So that was obviously a big achievement for us this year. Ryan Sipes, I really appreciate. I used him for testing a lot whenever we were at Rockstar because he just had a hillbilly straight approach, tell you if it was good or not, or whatever.
This sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really liked his demeanor. Metcalf, obviously, we're friends. Yeah. Everybody that we've worked with over the years have had a different impact. So it's not just like the star-studded people that I appreciate the most. Like Dakota Alex was one that I just, he stayed with us a lot. He'd come to California some and he'd stay with us, and my kid really liked him. And, I was like good with my kid and whatever. So it's just like a lot of those little personal connections that mean the most, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
All right. Who do you look up to in this industry?
Well, Mitch Payton, obviously. I think like he's always been really good to me in times where maybe I don't know that he has to. I know that you like Mitch a lot, so it's easy to talk good about him. But sometimes I'll get a phone call from him, and he'll just rattle. I don't know if he calls you with that stuff too, but it's just like
when he's in a talkative mood.
And he's one of the best storytellers of our time, right?
Yeah.
So I have a lot of time for him, and like even whenever I'm like in a moment where like I'm busy doing something, I'll like try to make time just to hear whatever he's saying.
I'm
because
the same way.
He's full of such like great stories, and he's been around for so long. And he also offered me a job between him and Deegan is where I was headed in that position. So I kind of am grateful that I could have went that route. And I still do envy like the race team side of what he's doing. Like I don't have that connection in depth with what I do.
Yeah.
As like work hard, figure out stuff, be able to like be in the nucleus of everything. And then when you win, it feels so much better because you've put in so much effort to get there. So I'd say Mitch Payton, Dave Gallen, and Bobby Hewitt for obviously believing in me. And Dave's been a mentor and kind of led me through some stuff or whatever. So I guess those are some kind of key people. And then everybody's seen what Deegan's done with his family because it's public. He could have taken a million different paths, and he shows up for his family. And so I think that that's really important and cool.
Yeah. Yeah, they have a really neat family dynamic going on, and his principles, and it's been impressive,
And you can see it through the comments on his page. Like he's kind of spiritually guided a lot of people, that maybe followed him in his spiky chest protector days to see him turn his shit around and become someone they look up to. And so I don't know. I feel good stuff like that.
Oh, that's great. I feel like, and I'll ask your opinion, like the culture in our sport has changed a lot over the last 20 years, let's say. And I wonder if you think it's going in a good direction. I always say the more money that comes in, and we always want more money. Like these guys are working way too hard, taking too much risk to not get paid. So I love that they're making more money. But as more money comes in, I feel like the sport loses a little bit of its soul. Like it becomes more of a... When I go to the pro races now, I just want to go up into the stands. I'm like, I don't know, the scene is just different. It isn't the vibe that it used to be. And I'm coming from way back, 90s guy, right? But what do you think?
Well, I think, like we talked earlier, the progression of the sport and racing, and like in your time, like you could be on the other side of the fence and everybody was jetting two strokes, and it would sound so sick from the parking lot. Like these teams just ripping on these two strokes to make sure they're good. And then the box fans didn't create any walls. So obviously you could just walk up a little bit freer to someone and engage. And
no cell phones.
Yeah. No cell phones, no broadcasting of everything we do in our life in the moment. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's just... I mean, there's a lot of the world going on today that I really don't like either. Like, I have trouble with inflation mentally. I don't really know how to process what everything costs. I had this car battery that was under warranty, so I took it back, and the guy had trouble finding it. This is just Sunday. He had trouble finding it because it was like $137. And he's like, I haven't seen that price since I've worked here. He's like, so I was looking through all the other invoices. It's like, that battery sells for $250 now. And it's like, dude, everything in our life, like to me, $100 bills, like I remember when I saw my first one, like I was a small kid and my buddy's dad had a bit of money or whatever. And he had a $100 bill on the counter, like in this little tray. And I'm like, whoa. So I still have that memory of what is a $100 bill. And then I see how much we have to trade them. So as things evolve, as that stuff happens, it's just, I don't know. So it's how we deal with it and how we cope with it or whatever. But I think the sport has just grown to, obviously, like we need more $100 bills for riders to even eat right. You know what I mean? Like
100 is a 20.
Yeah. Now the training, now the trainer, now all the other maybe social norms to be successful that you think you need or you do need. That could be argued or whatever, but regardless, it's like if you don't figure out how to get like the privateer is really such a gap. It's like you have the top 4 guys that make a really, really good living because of their marketability. And then just beyond that, it's kind of the survivors, you know? So that's something that I wish we could like brand these riders a little bit different. I don't know how to do it. I don't have a solution, so it's kind of like complaining if you're saying something with no solution. But it would be nice. And Instagram and those things have become a requirement to build their brand equity. So it's like they're forced to do more now than just be good at riding a motorcycle. To be brandable or have some credibility to get hired.
Yeah.
Like sponsors want an edgy look. They want a social following. They want, now the list of stuff. So it's like you have to start your brand early, like as a rider, and try to create a following and try to do all of these things that weren't necessary in your day. So it's like there's just a lot more challenges that are different challenges.
Let me throw this at you. Because you're talking about privateers, and this is a concern I've started having this just the last year or so. There's only 22 spots on a Supercross starting gate. How many of those you'd say are privateers right now? At A1, everyone's healthy.
Not that many in the 250 class. I think that there's
or
probably
the 450
more
class.
in the 450 class.
Okay, let's say there's 8 in the 450 class. A fair assessment?
Close, yeah.
Now add Triumph. Now add Beta. Maybe Ducati is what potentially down the road. Now add Stark. Okay, a couple of years from now. The whole Gates factory. There are no privateers.
Yeah, but those guys that would have been on privateer equipment are now on some sort of a factory equipment because they have to fill guys.
Potentially, yeah.
So
is that good or bad though? The whole grid is factory teams, and if you aren't on a team, you're out.
Hopefully, it's good because there's Kawasaki's only going to have 2 450s, right? If they have 3, it's kind of weird, but they typically only have 2.
Yeah.
So those 4 other potential factory level guys are now going to end up on a Ducati, let's say. So now they have a chance with a manufacturer to earn more money and survive. And then maybe at that point, whenever there is enough factory guys, they're just going to be the same guys. There's only 22 guys that make a main event. So if you just consider more of them factory and pay them more money, there's more money going around in the pits. So that I view that as a really good thing because these manufacturers, you kind of have. The only thing that drives prices is competition. If your competition is high and you're struggling to sell, you will lower your prices.
Right.
And if your competition is
supply and demand. Yeah.
So, these what if, a A-Ray kind of guy, maybe he could have continued racing had he had a Ducati ride that's coming into the sport or what. So I don't know. I think it's just going to be more opportunity. I don't think less guys are, maybe less guys are going to be factory in the main events, but more racers are going to end up with paying opportunity because there's only so many.
Yeah, I think it's good in the GPs because they have a hard time filling the gate now. I think it'll be a boon for them, right?
Yep.
Having more brands.
Yep.
But I think we need to also start thinking a little bit more long-term here. Let's embrace arena cross. Let's try to build that up.
Yep.
Right? Because you're going to have a level of guys that just aren't going to make it. They don't get the factory ride, and they're good riders. Where do they go? Right?
Yeah, Justin Heff just won the championship this year.
Justin Heff. Yeah.
You know what
this
I mean?
is a kid that could have been a pro Supercross motocross
He still
guy.
can be. I mean,
he's great.
Yeah. He still can be.
Brand new works champion. Yeah. So I just feel like we need to create as many opportunities. I know people are poo-pooing the World Supercross, and I'm not saying it's even the thing because they've mismanaged that 9 ways to Sunday, but we need to support other racing avenues, off-road, arena cross, etc., to give these guys other avenues who spent their whole life building to this, and if they can't quite get on, where do they go? It sucks that they don't have somewhere.
I kind of laughed a little bit, and I'm like, every one of you suckers that race AMA should send Adam Bailey a gift card for Christmas because you all got super motocross out of that situation.
Yep.
So it's like competition will bring more opportunity.
Amen.
So yeah, if you view it like that, like the other side of it, more guys are going to get jobs.
Yep.
And so it's like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Well said. Well, I've taken up a lot of your time, buddy. We always ask the last question. Everyone here is kind of a legacy question. It's, how do you want to be remembered in this sport? What footprint do you want to leave?
I'd like to think that, going back to just maybe my goals is that I contributed, that I am a part of the sport's history by giving back some way, somehow through the growth. That's really a tough question that maybe I haven't really even prepared what my legacy would be. You see somebody with the amount of time like Mitch has, he gets inducted in the Hall of Fame. he's left his stamp on what is going on. Like, we're just building engines, we're not building character. So it's kind of maybe a different path for me, not housing a race team or building up these young riders to turn them through into the pros. I guess I don't really know. I know I'm overly passionate about the sport. I love what I do. I don't have to like be drug into work. I'm motivated to do it, and that drives me. So I'm thankful for everything that the sport is. I'm more focused on that than I guess I am whatever legacy I leave behind. It's just showing up and doing what I love doing.
And you're pretty early in your career, so this is probably a little early for that question, but we ask it of everybody.
Yeah,
I would say right now, if I had to list, at least in the U.S., best 3 engine builders, you're on that list.
Appreciate that.
You're near the top.
Thank you.
So that's a huge, as young as you are, I think you're probably younger than me by a good bit.
Yeah,
that's a huge accomplishment, man. And I think what you're going to be one of these guys that really helps make these transitions when new technology comes in. Because whether it's you studying or just your college history or whatever it is, you seem to be just at the pointy end of new technology development. And you're the guy. When I say someone's like, I need to get my ignition mapped, I'm like, there's only one guy. Like, call him. So anyway,
I appreciate that,
dude. Thanks so much for making the time.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. It was fun.
Happy to call you a friend, and it's fun to always work with you on builds. And appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, thanks, buddy.
All right, stick around. We'll be back to wrap up the show.
I wanna be bad with you, girl, like we're robbing a bank. I wanna be mad at the world, like it took you away. Don't wanna be mad at myself for my stupid mistakes.
Welcome back, everybody. All right, I want to thank Jaime Ellis for coming in. If you guys are looking at mapping, ignition stuff for your bike, engine work, Jaime and Twisted Development are, as I mentioned during the show, just absolutely at the pointy end of that. Very, very, very dialed in with all that stuff, maybe more so than just about anybody. So look at that if you're interested. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, I just want to thank our partners, Yamaha and Hilo Concepts, Method Race Wheels, all the folks that have supported us from the very beginning. We sure appreciate it. We've got great things coming. Our studio is being built as we speak. We were hung up for a long time waiting on permits, and it's finally rolling. And at the start of 2024, we will be in our new studio, which is going to be so good. This is definitely a makeshift spot we're in right now, and did not expect to be in here that long, but excited to show you guys what we've got cooking. Lots of cool things and some new places you're going to be able to see all this content. Just some really cool things happening. So as always, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate the support, and we'll see you guys soon. The Whiskey Throttle Show is brought to you by Yamaha. Join the Blue Crew today and take advantage of all that Yamaha has to offer, including amateur racing trackside support, awesome Yamaha contingency, Jason Rain's demos and instructional classes, and frankly, the most high-performing motorcycles available on the market today. Whether you're looking for a 4-stroke, a 2-stroke, a side-by-side, a quad, a boat, a generator, Yamaha prides themselves on absolute top-level quality and reliability. Rev your heart with Yamaha and join the Blue Crew today. Method Race Wheels, bringing you the lightest, strongest, fastest wheels in off-road for your truck, van, sprinter, UTV, or SUV. They've been dominating the Baja 500 and 1000 and every major off-road event around the world for years with high quality and performance. They also look amazing. They come in a bunch of different styles and colors for your rig, so check them out. You can get 20% off a set of wheels using our code Whiskey Throttle. No capitals, no spaces. 20% off using our code. Check them out. Troy Lee Designs is the leader in off-road motocross apparel and style. So whether you're looking for a cool new paint job for your helmet, maybe your name and number on your helmet lettered on, you're looking for new gear, you're looking for mountain bike gear, off-road gear, they've got the brand new Scout line and GP and SE models. Troy Lee Designs has it all. They've been leading this industry for decades, and they're going to continue to do it. Check out TroyLeeDesigns.com. SKDA is a moto graphics and seat covers company with several offices based around the globe. For too long, bikes and graphics have all looked the same. They just start to blend together. SKDA is working to change that. With super clean and unique design work, a bike with SKDA graphics stands out in a crowd and adds a touch of art to the world of moto. Hey, we need that. SKDA prides itself on providing premium customer service both before and after the sale is made. Visit SKDA online to view the current product range and get in touch with their team to get your bike refreshed. I want to just make a mention here that these guys, not only is their design way outside the box, very, very cool. They'll work with you on custom things. The products are incredible. Okay, they'll speak for themselves. But what's really awesome, and you'll notice this the minute you order one of these, man, they give you an email saying, hey, the product's been shipped. Hey, the product is here. It landed in this spot. Hey, it's coming today. Hey, your product's been delivered. They just so good about staying in touch with you and letting you know where it's at. Customer service is 100%, and that's just something that's rare these days. Check out SKDA. Here at the Whiskey Throttle Show, we're all about supporting brands that support our sport. And there's one tire company that has never walked away from the sport of motocross and supercross, and it's Dunlop. When times got tough and the economy took a crash, Dunlop stepped up and stayed with our sport to support it and the athletes and individuals that love it. Their MX53 line and MX33 lines absolutely dominate this sport. Every national championship at the pro level has been won in the last decade, and nearly every single amateur national championship at Loretta Lynn's has been won on a Dunlop. So if you're looking for high performance, you're looking for amazing quality, and you're looking to support a brand that never turns its back on our sport, there's only one choice for you, and it's Dunlop. Pro Circuit is the leader in aftermarket performance and quality. Whether you're looking for a little more horsepower out of your engine, some quality hard parts to improve the way your bike feels and looks, better handling through suspension or linkage arms, Pro Circuit is where you need to stop. It's your one-stop shop. You can go in there and get everything you need to make your motorcycle go from average to exceptional. Pro Circuit's got enough number one plates on their wall to side an entire home, and there's a reason for that. They're very, very good at what they do. The highest quality products with one goal in mind, and that's winning. Check out ProCircuit.com. Nihilo Concepts is leading the way in aftermarket hard parts. With their secondary on-switch device, something that was much needed in this sport, they've been innovating and bringing new products to market. Their latest is the new Nihilo Run Cool brake pistons. They're designed to be stronger than stock and provide exceptional cooling performance with less brake drag. Most OEM calipers pistons are made from aluminum that just can't hold up to the heat and extreme demands of serious racing. When they get hot, the aluminum will distort, causing loss of hydraulic pressure and brake failure. Nihilo's Run Cool pistons limit the area that boiling hot hydraulic fluid is able to come in contact with the piston, leaving 2/3 of the piston volume in open air with breather holes to enhance the cooling ability. It's made of a proprietary stainless blend, which is better at dissipating heat. You have issues with brake fade or brake failure, check out Nihilo Concepts among their many amazing hard parts and carbon fiber parts and titanium. NihiloConcepts.com. Seat Concepts is the leader in motorcycle saddles. If you're looking for a new cover or a new seat entirely, Seat Concepts is the place to go. They make custom seat foams catered to your height, weight, riding ability, riding type. They also have waterproof covers and foams that will not break down if you ride in a lot of inclement weather. And they pride themselves on being much more comfortable than OEM or any other aftermarket company. If you're looking for a new seat or a new cover, Seat Concepts, there's nothing better. Need to replace something on your bike that's worn out? Look no further than Pro-X. These guys aim to make everything OEM quality or better at an affordable price. And they've also got some new products coming. So right now, chains, sprockets, anything inside the engine internally, air filters. If it wears out, Pro-X makes it, and they make it at a quality level that's OEM or better. And they've got some new things coming that are awesome. A complete engine rebuild kits for the Polaris RZR 800s. Need to replace something on your bike that's worn out? Look no further than Pro-X. These guys aim to make everything OEM quality or better at an affordable price. And they've also got some new products coming. So right now, chains, sprockets, anything inside the engine internally, air filters. If it wears out, Pro-X makes it, and they make it at a quality level that's OEM or better. And they've got some new things coming that are awesome. A complete engine rebuild kits for the... If you've got a little Grom that's looking to get started in the motorcycle world, the best way to get them going is on a Stasic bike. They've got multiple sizes, so from your very young Groms to those who are a little more grown up, you can start them safely. They've got controls that allow you to control the speed so he can't get going too quick. They can touch the ground. There's not a lot of noise to distract them. It's the perfect way to get your child involved in motorcycling at a very young age. And if you've got a kid who's already out ripping, there's series popping up all over. For those of you in Southern California, go to www.ameminicross.com and join their local series. If you're outside of this state, contact your local track and ask them about starting a STASIC class at your local track. Get over to stasic.com and check out all they've got going on. Motul USA, we lean hard on these lubricants to keep us on the track and on the trail. And Motul has proven their quality over and over, most recently with their Dakar win with Ricky Brabeck. They're sponsoring Supercross teams. They're diving into our sport again full throttle, and we're stoked to have them on board. Amazing products, top to bottom. Motul USA, go check them out. And finally, last but not least, Specialized Bicycles. If you are in the market to start pedaling, this is where you want to start. They've got great entry-level bikes all the way up to the Cadillac, the new Levo e-bike, anything in between, man. It doesn't matter what kind of riding you're doing. Go check out and start with Specialized. Don't waste your time on something that's going to break. The derailler's not going to shift after a couple months. Get something quality. These guys make it. Specialized leads that industry. Thanks for watching and listening to the Whiskey Throttle Show. Be sure to like and subscribe to get notified when new shows go up. And be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And visit whiskeythrottlemedia.com for additional content.